Chapter 1069. Since you can come back, how can you go back? The sect master asked. Lu Yi shook his head. I don't have a way for the time being, but I think that since I can go there once, I can definitely go there a second time. It's just that the time is not right yet. So I plan to improve my cultivation in these few years, and rush back, to help senior brother, before the next blood race army, besiege the holy land of Jade Blood. He probably didn't need to worry about going back. When the time was right, he would have his own way back. Tianji sent him over to let him witness all kinds of things in the blood refining realm, and sent him back. The intention was obvious. The key was to improve his strength as much as possible in these few years, and gather as many useful people as possible. Otherwise, when the blood race army attacked again, the holy land of Jade Blood would be in danger. It was very simple for him to increase his strength, as long as he had enough battle merits. And now, he was refining the explosive fire spirit rock, and refining the twin chi connecting branch array disc. Every day, he would obtain a large amount of battle merits, and he would not be lacking in golden spirit sticks. The key was to gather people, which was troublesome for him. This was also one of the reasons why he chose to tell the sect master about the blood refining realm. In terms of connections, the sect master was better than him. After he finished talking about his big senior brother, Lu Yi brought up another matter. Sect master, 2 years ago, I was captured by someone called Yu Daiwei, but there was someone else behind her. Yu Daiwei called him Lord Venerable. At that time, I didn't know who this Lord Venerable was. Later, when I mentioned this matter to Big Senior Brother in the blood refining world, Big Senior Brother recognized that person's background. He said that the Lord Venerable was called Taishan, and was once his right-hand man. Taishan? The sect master was shocked. Shouldn't he be dead? Halfway through his words, he suddenly realized that the dead senior brother was still alive, so it was not strange that Taishan was still alive. After calming himself down, the sect master said, Taishan was indeed your senior brother's right-hand man. Back then, Taishan and Nian Yuxian were your senior brother's right-hand men. They followed your senior brother on expeditions, and made a name for themselves. Lu Yi knew that Nian Yuxian used to work under senior brother. He had heard about it from second senior sister, but he didn't expect senior brother to rely on these two so much. Now, one of them had become the lord of the mysterious organization, while the other was capable of suppressing an entire mountain pass by himself. Then why did he make such a bargain? Taishan probably felt the death of eldest senior brother, and was tired of the endless conflict between the two camps. Therefore, he wanted to create a third camp that could accommodate the cultivators, who were tired of the conflict between the two camps like him. He captured me so that I could help him create this camp. He has something in his hand that seems to be a token to create the third camp. Apparently, only I can use that thing. Lu Yi remembered that the token was a stone plate. At that time, he naturally didn't know what the stone plate was used for. But after chatting with his eldest senior brother many times in the blood refining boundary, he gradually figured out the whole story. The sect leader nodded. Taishan's temperament is not bad. It is natural for him to have such thoughts. In fact, he is not the only cultivator in the land of the 9 prefectures who is tired of the confrontation between the two camps. If he can really raise this banner, I'm afraid he will receive the support of many people. There should be many people who are secretly in contact with him, and are under his control. What do you mean? Lu Yi looked left and right with a mysterious look. The sect leader was well aware. He raised his hand and spiritual power surged. An invisible barrier covered the small courtyard, isolating it from external forces. Lu Yi raised his hand and waved. A corpse appeared in front of the sect leader. This is 2 years ago. I led a team to the misty cliff of Mount Mi to carry out a mission. There, I encountered the Chung clan and was invited to enter. In the end, the Chung clan suddenly launched an attack for no reason. I was forced to kill them all. Later on, it was proven that the Chung clan was secretly controlled by Mount Tai. I suspect that they had received instructions from Mount Tai to capture me, but failed. Later on, Yu Daiwei appeared. After Lu Yi disappeared, Xiao Xinghe reported the changes in the Chung clan to the law division. The Law Division also sent a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator to investigate the scene. Unfortunately, almost all the Chung clan cultivators died that day. The rest were only mortals. They did not find any useful clues at all. When I returned this time, Yu Daiwei sensed it immediately and wanted to capture me. Before she appeared, this person blocked my way. I fought with him and wanted to capture him alive. In the end, this person died inexplicably. It was exactly the same as the Chung clan cultivators that day. Sect leader. The Chung clan is controlled by Taishan, and this person is also controlled by Taishan. Moreover, they are all loyal to Taishan. Once things go wrong, they will immediately commit suicide. While Lu Yi was speaking, the sect leader checked Zhang Song's corpse, but found nothing. He stood up and said, "So you think that Taishan should be secretly controlling more forces?" "That's for sure, but I don't know who they are." On the surface, there were only 2 people, but how many were hidden in the dark, only Taishan himself knew. The sect leader pondered for a moment. At this time of chaos in the 9 regions, there is a hidden force that is indeed worrying. Although from the current clues, the purpose of Taishan was only to eliminate the endless confrontation between the 2 camps, and did not really want to cause chaos in the 9 regions, there were some things that could not be ignored. The 9 regions was already chaotic enough. No one could stir up trouble in the dark. In this situation, if Taishan used the power in his hands to add fuel to the fire, the 9 regions would only become more chaotic. At that time, the situation would be impossible to deal with. You don't have to worry about these things. This old man will investigate thoroughly in secret. The sect leader raised his hand and put away Zhang Song's corpse. After giving Lu Yi a few more instructions, the sect leader left. The reason he came here was to see Lu Yi, but as a result, he learned a lot of shocking news from Lu Yi, causing him to sigh with emotion. This disciple of his could also come into contact with many secrets unknown to others. This in itself was a manifestation of his strength. After seeing the sect leader off, Lu Yi returned to his room and continued the work at hand. Every 3 days, Cheng Xiu would send a large number of fire spirit stones and materials. Lu Yi worked hard to refine them. Although it was difficult to increase the production of the twin qi-connected formation in a short period of time, the supply of explosive fire spirit stones was endless. In the past, when he refined explosive fire spirit stones for the law department, it was calculated as 1,000 pieces a day. But to him, 1,000 explosive fire spirit stones a day was nothing. As long as he was willing, he could refine tens of thousands of them a day. An endless supply of explosive fire spirit stones meant an endless supply of battle merits. Lu Yi no longer cared about how many battle merits he had accumulated, because his battle merits had slowly accumulated to a level that many people could not reach in their lifetime. This meant that as long as he wanted, he could exchange for golden spiritual sticks at will to cultivate. In the history of the 9 regions, no one had ever been as rich as him. On this day, Lu Yi pushed open the door, jumped up, and rushed to the main hall of the law department. After a while, Lu Yi and Qian Wudong sat at a table in the main hall. Qian Wudong frowned. "You want to take a leave?" There was no other reason for this trip than to ask for a leave of absence from Qian Wudong. "Yes, I have an epiphany and need to go out for a while." Lu Yi said the words he had prepared in advance. Qian Wudong looked at him deeply. "Since you have an epiphany, you should go into seclusion. Why do you have to go out? It is not safe outside. How can a cultivator be safe everywhere?" Lu Yi did not want to waste time with him. "Just tell me if you agree or not." Qian Wudong smiled. "What if I don't agree?" Lu Yi frowned. "My lord, I've already been refining explosive fire spirit stones and disc arrays for 3 months. Even my cultivation base has increased by 1 level. You can't expect me to keep refining like this, right? Even prisoners in prison have time to get some fresh air. Not to mention that I'm not a prisoner." Lu Yi's cultivation had increased a month ago. After reaching the Spirit Sea realm, every level of cultivation consumed a lot of resources. It was impossible for others to break through so quickly. But during this time, Lu Yi's golden spirit sticks had not stopped. With the terrifying power of the talent tree, his cultivation speed was naturally faster than others. And this was under the premise that he had been refining continuously, regardless of whether it was refining the explosive fire spirit rock or the twin chi connecting branch formation disc. It would consume his spiritual power. In other words, he was cultivating and improving his foundation while consuming his spirit energy to break through. If he just cultivated, his cultivation speed would be even faster. Qian Wudong's face turned serious. The twin spirit connected array disc is very helpful to the current situation. Not only now, but even in the future, it will be extremely important. Only you can refine it in large quantities, so your safety. I am already a second-order spirit sea realm. I am not a child, sir. If it was someone else, I wouldn't have to worry about it. But since it is you, I have to consider these things. Although Pang Zhen had issued a gag order at the meeting, and none of the spirit sea realm cultivators present would reveal that Lu Yi could refine the twin spirit connected array disc, he still had to be careful. Why don't you send someone to secretly protect me? Lu Yi proposed. Of course, he knew that this was impossible. Sure enough, Qian Wudong snorted. In the current situation, how can I spare anyone to protect you? Then what should I do? Lu Yi looked at him anxiously. Just stay in Grand Sky City. Qian Wudong knocked on the table. Don't go anywhere. Lu Yi got up and left. Qian Wudong was still threatening him. If you dare to run around, I will find someone to break your legs. Lu Yi thought he was just talking nonsense. Leaving the law department's main hall, he shot up into the sky. Sensing that Lu Ye's aura was getting farther and farther away, Qian Wudong couldn't help but sigh. He also knew that he couldn't stop Lu Yi. But as Lu Ye's boss, he had to show his attitude. What could he do if his subordinate didn't listen to him? He couldn't go out and catch him. As Lu Yi said, he was already a second-order spirit sea realm cultivator. He was no longer a child. Please enter the latest update in your browser. Check it in the Essence Library. To provide you with the latest updates of Great God Momo's Human Race Great Sage. In order to be able to check the latest updates of this book next time, please keep your bookmark well. Chapter 1069, Spirit Sea Free Reading on Leave. Chapter 1070. After leaving Grand Sky City, Lu Yi took out a map to compare and flew in a certain direction. As for Gan Wudong's threat, he didn't take it to heart. How could he take his words seriously? 3 months of cultivation were like a day. During this period, he was constantly refining explosive fire spirit stones and twin spirit connecting array. His days were too boring. He couldn't be compared to those old spirit sea realm cultivators who had been famous for a long time. They could settle down and sit in one place like a stone. In the end, he was just a young man in his early 20s. Young people had the vitality of young people. If he really lived like an old spirit sea realm cultivator, he wouldn't be young anymore. He didn't have to do anything. Even if he just came out for a walk and changed the environment, he could still adjust his mood. The improvement of the spirit sea realm was not only reflected in one's spirit energy storage, but also in the expansion of one's spirit sea. It was an all-round growth. Every level of improvement had a significant increase in strength. Compared to the previous first-order spirit sea realm, the increase in one's spirit energy storage was needless to say. The consumption of so many golden spirit sticks wasn't in vain. His spirit sea was obviously bigger than before, which meant that his divine sense had been strengthened. Lu Yi flew while looking down at the earth below. It was a scene of devastation. Originally, the 9 states was full of outstanding people and beautiful lands. However, after the insect race's rampage, there was rarely any greenery on the ground. For cultivators who were successful in their cultivation, these effects weren't that great. However, for cultivators who weren't very powerful or even mortals, these changes were unbearable pain. Mortals had to eat grains to survive. However, in the current environment, even the best fields had become barren. No one dared to come out and cultivate. Even if there was no guarantee that the insect race wouldn't come out and wreak havoc. In the long run, once the foundation of mortals was shaken, it would affect the entire cultivation world. It could be said that this insect race was the biggest disaster in the history of the 9 states. However, the cultivation world didn't have a good way to deal with it so far. Countless cultivators guarded the 4 directions and killed the insect race. However, if the source wasn't eliminated, the insect race wouldn't stop. Along the way, he could see groups of cultivators fighting against the insect race from time to time. Especially at the places where the cracks were, battles broke out very frequently. This was because the insectoids crawled out from the cracks in the ground. Most of the Divine Sea Realm warriors were stationed near the cracks of a certain scale. However, no matter how many Divine Sea Realm warriors there were in the military province, they could not outnumber the number of cracks in the ground. Many of the smaller fishers were unguarded, and could only rely on Cloud River tier and True Lake tier cultivators to kill the insects. This was also the reason why there was a shortage of manpower in the 9 prefectures. Lu Yi occasionally made a move and had some success, but it was just a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. A day later, a city appeared in the distance. The scale of the city was not large. It could only be considered a small city. Cities like this could be seen everywhere in the 9 states. Red River City, the city where Team D9 was now. There was a warrior of the Spirit Sea Realm in the city. Lu Yi didn't conceal himself when he arrived. The warrior sensed his presence and sent out his psychic power. Lu Yi responded with his psychic power as well. This was also a strange way of greeting people in the Spirit Sea Realm. A figure flew up from the city and stood in mid-air, looking in the direction of Lu Yi. After a while, Lu Yi flew over and stopped 200 feet away from the warrior. The warrior of the Spirit Sea Realm was a middle-aged man. He was a 4th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator. It was not high but not low. For a small city like Red River City, it was enough. His main task was the same as Li Taibai's. There was nothing for him to do. There were many Cloud River tier and True Lake tier cultivators here, which was enough to deal with most situations. What he needed to do was to kill some Spirit Sea Realm insectoids. Of course, if he encountered an insectoid he couldn't defeat, he could only ask for outside help. There were many top Spirit Sea Realm cultivators in the military province on standby. When they received a request for help, they would rush to help. Lu Yi of the law department greets senior brother. Lu Yi bowed first and stated his identity. The middle-aged man returned the greeting. Long River Sect's Shi Yuan. The Long River Sect was a nearby 3rd-grade sect. Red River City was under the rule of the Long River Sect. Now that the insectoid plague was sweeping, it was natural for the Long River Sect to send a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator to guard the Red River City. The defense of the military province adhered to the principle of proximity. The large sects would send their own people to guard the area under their jurisdiction. Only the areas where there were no Spirit Sea Realm cultivators in the middle grade and lower grade sects were located with the province guards send Spirit Sea Realm cultivators there. Lu Yi of the Blue Blood sect? Shi Yuan suddenly reacted. Yes. I've heard a lot about you. Shi Yuan greeted him on the surface, but he was secretly shocked. A few years ago, Lu Yi stirred up a storm in the Spirit Stream battlefield and caused a lot of trouble. His name spread widely in the Myriad Demon Ridge, and many people from Grand Heaven Alliance paid attention to him. Shi Yuan was shocked that in just a few years, Lu Yi had already reached the Spirit Sea Realm. Moreover, he had not just reached the Spirit Sea Realm. From his aura, he was already a 2nd-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator. It was said that the Blue Blood sect was a tiger that would not fall. It seemed that it was true. Junior brother Lu, what brings you here? Shi Yuan asked after calming himself down. Lu Yi was definitely not here to exchange positions with him. Red River City was under the jurisdiction of the Long River sect, so if there was a need to exchange positions, it would be a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator from the sect. There was no need to trouble others. I have a few relatives who work for senior brother and were passing by here, so I came to take a look. As Lu Yi spoke, he turned his head and looked towards the city wall. Several figures rushed up the wall, obviously aware of his presence, and were eagerly looking over. Seeing Lu Yi look over, Lin Xiao jumped up and waved her hand, as if she was afraid that Lu Yi would not see her. Shi Yuan understood and smiled slightly. So that's how it is. Junior brother Lu, please go ahead. I won't delay you from catching up. Saying so, Lu Yi turned around and flew towards the city wall. In the blink of an eye, He was in front of everyone. Hoopa jumped up from the giant beetle's head and dove into Lu Ye's arms. Lu Ye's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. He raised his hand and grabbed Hoopa by the neck, lifting it up. Hoopa whimpered, its eyes filled with helplessness. Holding Hoopa, Lu Ye looked at the familiar faces in front of him and smiled. Third senior brother, fourth senior brother. Xiao Xinghe's expression was complicated as he sighed. We can't compare. After not seeing each other for 2 years, junior brother is already at the Spirit Sea realm, but we are still at the True Lake realm. When he first met Lu Yi, his cultivation was the same as Lu Ye's, but now he was still at the True Lake realm, while Lu Yi was already at the Spirit Sea realm. Although the difference in cultivation level was not too big, there was still a gap in realm. Li Baxian laughed. Once you are junior brother, you will always be junior brother. So what if you are at the Spirit Sea realm? Junior brother, go ahead, senior brothers will catch up soon. To be honest, the progress of their cultivation was not slow. After all of them had good aptitudes. Especially in the last 2 years, it was much easier to obtain military merits than before. In the entire 9 regions, the overall strength of the cultivators was steadily rising. But everything was afraid of comparison. With Lu Ye's progress in cultivation, their progress was nothing. Lu Yi smiled. Fourth senior brother is right. I will go ahead and scout the path for senior brothers. Brothers who had not met for a long time naturally had endless things to talk about. But the place was not right, so they could only exchange a few words. Lu Yi turned his head to the side. Lin Yinxiu immediately jumped out and greeted. Captain. Lu Yi laughed. I am not the captain now. Your captain is my third senior brother. Lin Yinxiu thought for a while and changed her words. Old captain. Lu Yi was speechless. He looked at Feng Yuechan, senior sister Feng. Feng Yuechan smiled. Your 2 junior brothers have been missing you. You have been back for so long, but you have not come to see them. You finally came today. Lu Yi explained. I was delayed by some things. A strange thought appeared in his mind. According to seniority, Feng Yuechan was his martial niece, but he was used to calling her senior sister. It did not matter to him. But what about fourth senior brother? In the past, everyone thought that eldest senior brother had died long ago. So there were some things that did not need to be investigated. The friendship between childhood sweethearts could not be blocked by seniority. But eldest senior brother was still alive and well. If they had the chance to meet in the future, he did not know if fourth senior brother would be beaten up. What's wrong? Feng Yuechan looked at Lu Yi in confusion. She felt that Lu Ye's gaze was a little strange. Nothing, I just remembered something. Lu Yi could tell the sect master about eldest senior brother's situation, but he could not tell anyone else, not even Feng Yuechan. What could he do even if he told them? The 2 realms were separated by an unknown distance, and it would only disturb one's state of mind. If he had the chance to return to the blood-refining realm in the future, he could bring Feng Yuechan along and let her meet her relatives. Looking up at Giant Armor's tall figure, Lu Yi reached out and patted him on the shoulder. Giant Armor grinned foolishly. Didn't you say that the members of Team D9 were replenished? Why are there only a few of you? Lu Yi asked. The team had a full complement of 6 members, but there were only 5 in front of him. Of course, if Yi, who was hiding in Hupo's body, was included, then there were indeed 6 people. There is one more person preparing to welcome you, junior brother. Li Baxian faintly smiled, looking a little mysterious. Lu Yi sensed something. I know him. You'll know if you know him or not. Everyone flew towards the city. The city was bustling with people. When the insect plague broke out, all the mortals within a radius of 300 miles were gathered in Red River City. So the city was a little crowded now. Fortunately, there were cultivators from the Eternal River sect guarding the city, so the city's security was not bad. However, most of the people were sallow and thin, obviously lacking in food. As everyone landed in a small courtyard, Lu Yi scanned with his divine sense, and immediately understood who the 6th member of the team was. It was a reasonable thing, for pairs of eyes met. The bright-eyed woman smiled gently, looking like a dignified and knowledgeable young lady. But when she spoke, there was a familiar tone. You didn't get your soul stolen by a wild fox, and still know to come back. Not bad. Please enter the latest update in your browser, check it in the Essence library, to provide you with the latest update of Great God Momo's The Great Sage. In order to be able to check the latest update of this book next time, please be sure to keep your bookmark well. Chapter 1070, Great Sage Free Reading in Red River City. Chapter 1071. Wuxia had left the Cloud River battlefield. This meant that the Five Poisons Pool would no longer be able to provide her with any assistance in cultivation. This forbidden area would most likely become like the Thousand Poisons Forest in the Spirit Stream battlefield, becoming unworthy of its name. There are only demons and monsters in the wild. How could there be a fox that can steal souls? Lu Yi looked at her with a smile. Ever since they had returned from the Wuxia continent, they had not seen each other again. Counting the years, it had been almost 3 years. For a young man like Lu Yi, this kind of separation was still very long. But this was the nature of cultivators. They couldn't be like mortal men and women who spent all day together. Each of them had their own matters to attend to. A sudden encounter wouldn't diminish the affection in their hearts because of the passage of time. Instead, it would ferment the feelings in their hearts because of the long-term concern and longing. Besides, how can wild flowers have the fragrance of home flowers? Wuxia was very surprised. Shouldn't it be the other way around? Lu Yi said seriously. Every flower enters its own eye. I don't care about others, I just like home flowers. Wuxia raised her hand to shield her forehead, pretending to say, "Where are the home flowers? Why can't I see them? They are in my eyes." Wuxia suddenly blushed and softly said, "Nonsense." To the side, third senior brother and fourth senior brother had a look of disdain as they quietly watched the two flirt in public. On the contrary, Feng Yuechan and Lin Yinxiu were watching with great interest. Yi poked her little head out from behind Wuxia and winked at Lu Yi. Lu Yi laughed and waved at her. "Look, this is my family's little flower." Yi jumped with joy and rushed into Lu Ye's arms. She hugged him tightly and pinched the flesh on Lu Ye's waist. "Next time, don't leave me in Hupa." Lu Yi felt the pain, but did not show it on his face. I won't. Only then did Yi release him in satisfaction. After a short while, everyone took their seats. Wuxia served them tea and Xiaoxinghe raised his cup, saying, "Come, let us first congratulate little junior apprentice brother on his safe return. Second, congratulate little junior apprentice brother on reaching the Divine Sea. And third, congratulate us on being able to follow in little junior apprentice brother's footsteps. Everyone let us drink." Lu Yeqi asked, "How come there's only tea, there's no wine?" Li Baxian smacked his lips. "In today's world, we can't even guarantee food to eat. How can we have surplus food to make wine?" Xiao Shidi, don't mention the word wine, Xixiang. I haven't tasted wine for more than half a year, I really miss it. Lu Yi laughed and took out a few jars from his storage space and placed them on the table. Li Baxian's eyes immediately lit up. He opened the jar and refilled everyone's cups. Even the amber was given a bowl. Xiaoxinghe raised his cup again, and everyone drank together. The atmosphere was lively. There was no wine to accompany it, but everyone was still in high spirits, especially Li Baxian, who drank 3 bowls in a row before letting out a satisfied breath. Reuniting after such a long time, they naturally had many things to talk about. They didn't stick to any topic and chatted freely. After a while, Xiaoxinghe asked, "Xiao Shidi, where have you been trapped for more than 2 years?" These words immediately aroused everyone's interest, and they all looked over. Lu Yi pondered for a moment and said, "I can't say exactly where it is for the time being, but I promise that if there's a chance in the future, I'll take everyone to have a look." Returning to the blood refining realm, he was bound to pull a group of helpers, and Team D9 naturally couldn't escape. To others, he could lie and say that he was trapped in a small secret realm, but to the people close to him, he couldn't lie to them. However, he couldn't say much about the blood refining realm for the time being, so he could only give this guarantee. Everyone didn't ask further. Since Lu Yi said so, there would be a day when they would know. They weren't in a hurry, and the reason why they asked was only out of concern. Lu Yi then asked about the various things that happened to everyone here. And Xiao Xinghe and Li Baxian talked one after another. They drank until the sky turned dark, and then until dawn. Lu Ye's wine reserve was emptied. Hupo was sprawled on the ground, snoring so loudly that it shook the heavens. The women's faces were all red, especially Wuxia, whose neck was glowing with a pink luster. At dawn, a shrill whistle suddenly sounded from the city, and then a large number of cultivators rose into the sky. Xiao Xinghe also stood up and raised his eyebrows. The insect tide is here. Although there are cultivators killing insects everywhere, and it's rare to see insect tides of this scale now, this kind of thing still happens occasionally. This was especially true when powerful divine sea realm insectoids emerged from the fissures. They would lead a large number of insectoids to attack human settlements. Red River City had experienced a few such insectoid waves, but they were all small in scale. Everyone worked together to deal with them. The situation this time was no different. Xiao Shidi, let's stop drinking today. When the situation stabilizes in the future, we brothers will have a good gathering again. Okay, Lu Yi replied. Everyone stood up, picked up the last of the wine in their cups, and drank it in one gulp. Let's go, Xiao Xinghe ordered and flew into the air. The others followed closely behind, and even Wuxia, a medical cultivator, was no exception. When she flew into the air, she raised her hand and waved. In the distortion of space, a huge golden toad appeared out of thin air. She stood on the toad's head and smiled at Lu Yi. Don't die. All right. Lu Yi was still looking at her golden toad. He didn't know where Wuxia found this thing, but now it seemed very likely that it came from a dangerous place like the Five Poison Pool. Hearing Huasi's words, he quickly nodded. Although they had only been together for a short time, although there were still a lot of things to say, although he couldn't bear to part, Lu Yi knew that this was the only way. His friends had their own paths, and he also had his own things to do. It was like the water of a river. When they started from the source, they embraced and protected each other. But in the process of flowing, there would be many forks and tributaries. However, as long as they continued to flow, they would eventually meet in the sea. The insect tide was about to arrive. As the only divine ocean realm cultivator in the city, Shi Yuan was arranging his subordinates. From the current situation, the scale of the insect tide this time wasn't large, and Red River City's defenses could completely resist it. What made him feel a little troubled was that there were more than 10 divine ocean realm insects in the insect tide this time. Due to the insect race's low intelligence, human cultivators could easily fight against many of the same level of cultivation. However, once the number of insects increased to a certain extent, it would be very difficult to deal with them. It was true that the insect race's intelligence was low, but they had their own areas of expertise, and that was their various strange abilities, especially the sturdy defense provided by their thick carapaces. In the 2 years that the insect tide had swept through the 9 prefectures, many divine ocean realm cultivators of the human race had lost their lives due to carelessness. Shi Yuan didn't want to follow in their footsteps. He was hesitating whether to ask for reinforcements when he suddenly saw a ray of light soaring into the sky somewhere in the city. Immediately after, the ray of light made a turn in midair and brazenly charged in the direction of the insect tide. Shi Yuan was shocked, but he quickly reacted. The figure that charged out was Lu Yi, who had come to Red River City yesterday. As expected, he was young and impetuous, but his actions were a little reckless. Before he could stop him, the ray of light had already charged into the insect tide. Immediately after, Shi Yuan saw a scene that shocked him. As the saber light surged, it stirred up a storm of blood wherever it went, as if it was plowing a courtyard. It plowed a vacuum in the insect tide. Regardless of whether it was Cloud River Realm or True Lake Realm insects, it was difficult for them to fight back. In the blink of an eye, the figure charged into the center of the insect tide, where the divine ocean realm insects gathered. It was still a sharp saber light. Even with Shi Yuan's eyesight, he couldn't even catch the traces of the figure's movements. In his field of vision, the divine ocean realm insects were dismembered one after another. Insect blood and wine fell to the ground, and severed limbs flew into the air. After a few back and forth, the huge insect tide was directly divided, and the dozen or so divine ocean realm insects were all killed without exception. The ray of light quickly flew away, and a voice came from afar. The mountains are high and the rivers are long. Senior brothers and sisters, let's meet again another day. Shi Yuan stared at it, and his mind was shaken for a long time. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. His reputation is well deserved. A few years ago, Wuxia of the Jade Blood sect stirred up a big storm, but that was only in the Spirit Stream realm and Cloud River realm. To be honest, other than the Divine Ocean Realm cultivators who had been paying attention to him, most of the Divine Ocean Realm cultivators didn't pay much attention to him. Those who could show off their strength in the Spirit Stream realm and Cloud River realm might not be able to do anything in the True Lake realm or Divine Ocean realm, let alone raise their strength in the Divine Ocean realm. The growth of a cultivator was always accompanied by all kinds of accidents. Moreover, someone like Wuxia, who showed off his ability in the beginning, might not be able to go far. In fact, in recent years, Shi Yuan hadn't heard of Wuxia doing anything big. In the eyes of people, this was a sign that his potential had been exhausted. But after seeing him today, Shi Yuan knew that some people were destined to shine. Even if it was only a short silence, there would be a time when they would erupt fiercely. Shi Yuan was a fourth-order Divine Ocean Realm cultivator, 2 realms higher than Wuxia. But even if he had 10 times the courage, he couldn't single-handedly charge into the enemy's den like Wuxia. If he really did that, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to return alive. The rise of Wuxia of the Jade Blood sect was already somewhat unstoppable. Calming his mind, Shi Yuan shouted, "Open the array, kill the enemy!" Originally, he planned to rely on Red River City's defensive array to block the enemy. This was a safe and secure method that would minimize the losses on his side. However, many cultivators in the city had seen the scene of Wuxia sweeping away the enemy with their own eyes. They were all excited, and their fighting spirit was high. If he continued to act according to his original plan, it would only waste their morale. Since that was the case, he might as well kill his way out. An insect tide without a Divine Ocean Realm cultivator was not enough. With an order, the defensive array was removed. Many cultivators rushed forward like a torrent to meet the chaotic insect race. A small-scale battle immediately began. Wuxia was already several hundred kilometers away. He didn't kill the insect race not because he didn't want to, but because there was no need to. For the current cultivators of the 9 provinces, the insect race was a walking achievement. If he killed too many, the benefits for others would be reduced. However, since he had encountered it, he couldn't just sit back and watch. Killing the Divine Ocean Realm insects in the insect tide was the best way to deal with it. As for the remaining insect race, he could leave it to the cultivators of Red River City. Please enter the latest update in your browser. Check it in the Essence Book Pavilion to provide you with the latest updates of Great God Momo's Human Race Great Sage. In order to be able to check the latest updates of this book next time, please be sure to save your bookmark. Chapter 1071, Invincible Jiahua and Wildflower read for free. Chapter 1072, Flying Through the Air. Wuyi traveled at a leisurely pace. When Shifeng left Vast Sky City, he had 2 things to do. The first was to visit 3rd Senior Brother, 4th Senior Brother, and the others in Red River City. He had already done that. The second thing was to go to the front line where the 2 camps were fighting. Wuxia's main body had already broken through to the 2nd Order Divine Sea Realm, but his avatar was still the same. So Wuyi had to recondense his avatar to the 2nd Order Divine Sea Realm. Only then would his avatar be able to display greater strength. The prerequisite for condensing a clone was to retrieve the original clone. Therefore, Wuyi had to make a trip no matter what. Fortunately, he had reached the Divine Sea Realm very quickly, so it wouldn't take too long. Another day later, Wuyi had already crossed the front line of Grand Sky Alliance and arrived at the center of Shocking Waves Lake Pass and Dark Moon Forest Pass. It wasn't good to go any further, as he would reach the Dark Moon Forest Pass defensive zone. He was a member of Grand Sky Alliance after all. Although the 2 camps hadn't reached a truce, they had tacitly stopped fighting and focused on fighting against the insect plague. If he rashly entered the myriad demon ridge's defensive zone, it might cause unnecessary misunderstandings. He found a crack in the ground and dived in. He killed the nearby insectoids and waited quietly. A sword light swept across the sky. His clone Li Tai stood on the sword light and rushed towards his main body. It had to be said that among all the schools, sword cultivators were the most elegant when it came to flying on their swords. No other school could compare to this. Along the way, they would occasionally meet some myriad demon ridge cultivators who were hunting insects outside. They would all stop and salute respectfully. In these 3 months, Li Tai had made quite a name for himself in the Dark Moon Forest Pass. Every time he took action, he was always successful. Many cultivators in the myriad Devil Ridge were indebted to him for saving their lives. The cultivators of Dark Moon Forest Pass loved and respected this new little pass master from the bottom of their hearts. Lin Yu was also very satisfied with his performance. Ever since she had Li Tai, the burden on her body had been greatly reduced. She was no longer as tired as before. Now she was glowing every day. Spreading out his divine sense, he monitored the surroundings. After making sure that there was no one around, he plunged into the fissure below. A moment later, the avatar stood in front of Lu Yi. Lu Yi raised his hand and placed it on the avatar's chest. The roots of the talent tree extended and entered the avatar's body. In the blink of an eye, the avatar Li Tai disappeared, leaving behind only the scarlet dragon battle robe and the sword gourd. The moment Lu Yi raised his hand to catch it, the spirit energy around his body suddenly burst forth. His entire body turned into a stream of light as he flew to the side. While he was in the air, the sword chi from the sword gourd flew towards a certain direction. At the same time, he raised his hand and pulled out the mountain blade at his waist. His body followed closely behind the sword chi as he slashed down. Where the sword light wreaked havoc, the void distorted, and a figure appeared out of thin air. The sudden attack, coupled with the shock in his mind, caused the figure to be flustered. He barely managed to block the onslaught of the mini sword lights, but another sharp saber light came at him. In a hurry, his berserk spirit energy surged, transforming into a massive impact that met the saber light. With a boom, spirit energy surged, and Lu Yi's body uncontrollably retreated. The figure that had suddenly appeared also retreated a dozen steps before stabilizing himself. Several dozen meters away, Lu Yi raised his saber, his eyes drooping as he expressionlessly looked ahead. He had been careless. When the avatar had arrived, there had been a tail following behind him. It was none other than Lu Yuemei from the Startling Waves Lake Pass. Lu Yi didn't know what method Lu Yuemei had used to conceal her figure and aura, but it clearly wasn't her own ability. From what he knew, Lu Yuemei was a magic cultivator. Even if her cultivation was much higher than the avatar's, it was impossible for her to conceal herself so perfectly. When the avatar had arrived, it had been paying attention to the surroundings. There had been no abnormalities at all, or else the avatar wouldn't have rushed down to meet up with the main body. As for why Lu Yuemei had followed the avatar, there was no need to think about it. Naturally, it was to harm the avatar. This woman harbored a grudge against Li Tai. Back then, in order to avenge her son, she didn't hesitate to use the power of the Startling Waves Lake Pass. During the battle, she didn't care about anything else, and only attacked Li Tai in order to kill him with her own hands. In that battle, she had used her spiritual energy on Li Tai and attacked fiercely. She had thought that Li Tai would definitely die, and it could be considered as her revenge. After that, news of Li Tai's death had indeed spread from the Dark Moon Forest Pass, and the matter had come to an end. However, in recent months, Li Tai had frequently taken action to save the cultivators of the Myriad Demons Ridge. Occasionally, he would also encounter some cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance. Lu Yuemei was in charge of the Startling Waves Lake Pass. As long as one wasn't blind or deaf, they would naturally receive some news about Li Tai. How could Lu Yuemei tolerate the fact that the enemy who had killed her son had come back to life? Since the day she received the news, she had been thinking about how to kill Li Tai. It wasn't a wise move to make a move so blatantly. It wasn't because she was considering the current situation of the two camps. She had to avenge her son. To a woman like her, the two camps had nothing to do with her. As long as she could kill Li Taibai and avenge her son, she wouldn't hesitate to start another war between the two camps. However, she was the only spirit sea realm cultivator in the Startling Waves Lake Pass. The original leader of the Startling Waves Lake Pass, Che Xiong, had been transferred away. On the other hand, there was still Lin Yu at the Dark Moon Forest Pass. If she couldn't kill Li Taibai in one strike, Lin Yu would definitely intervene. At that time, she might not be able to win against two opponents. Moreover, Li Taibai's range of activity had always been small, and he didn't give Lu Yueme too many opportunities. Until today, when Li Taibai crossed the middle line between the two camps, Lu Yueme secretly followed him. When she saw the opportunity, she sneaked into the fissure and waited for the opportunity to make a move. In this kind of environment, coupled with her cultivation far exceeding Li Taibai's, she was confident that she could end the battle in less than half a cup of tea's time. As for what problems would arise after killing Li Taibai, she didn't even bother to think about it. Her plan was very good. In order to not be noticed by Li Taibai, she even used an extremely precious artifact to smoothly sneak into the fissure with Li Taibai. However, before she could take action, she saw an incomprehensible scene. Lu Ye was actually waiting here. When Li Taibai stepped forward, Lu Ye raised his hand and Li Taibai disappeared. Even if Lu Yueme was a 7th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator, she was still shocked by this scene, and for a moment, accidentally revealing a trace of her aura. What followed was what happened just now. As their four eyes met, all kinds of thoughts flashed across Lu Ye's mind. Although he didn't know how things had reached this point, he could still guess the general situation. It wasn't that he wasn't careful enough. It was just that there was no such thing as being a thief for 1,000 days. Lu Yueme came from the Heavenly Yuan sect, so she must have some rare treasures on hand. Coupled with her high cultivation, if she really wanted to hide, it would be difficult for his clone to detect her. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Lu Ye's murderous intent soared. It wasn't that Li Taibai's identity couldn't be exposed. If it was exposed, so be it. At worst, his clone wouldn't go to the Dark Moon Forest Pass, so there wouldn't be any substantial losses. It was just that in the current situation, even if he was willing to compromise, Lu Yueme wouldn't. Not to mention the fact that his clone Li Taibai had killed her son. Lu Yueme wouldn't let this matter go. Even his main body had some grievances with Lu Yueme. When he had transferred his third senior brother from the Dark Moon Forest Pass, Lu Yueme had chased them all the way back. If it weren't for the sect master and Gan Wu Dang arriving in time, the consequences would have been unimaginable. At that time, his cultivation wasn't high, so he couldn't fight back against Lu Yueme, and could only be beaten like a punching bag. If it weren't for the golden body token, he would have already died. Now, with the passage of time, he had the capital to compete with her. While he was filled with murderous intent, Lu Yueme also revealed her murderous intent. In the end, she was an experienced and knowledgeable person. So although she was shocked by the strange scene she had just witnessed, she quickly reacted. Li Taibai was Lu Ye's clone. She couldn't figure out how Lu Ye, a mere artifact cultivator, could cultivate such an exquisite clone technique. This kind of mysterious secret technique was generally something only the top cultivators were qualified to master. Even she hadn't even crossed the threshold yet, let alone used it. But this didn't hinder her determination to eradicate Lu Ye here. For her, this was a pleasant surprise. Li Taibai had killed her son, so he had to be eliminated. Lu Ye wasn't a good person either. She had tried to kill him but failed, so their relationship had worsened, so there was no possibility of reconciliation. Lu Ye's cultivation had advanced at an incredible speed. In just 2 or 3 years, he had already reached the 2nd-order Divine Sea Realm. In the future, his cultivation would definitely surpass hers. At that time, there was no guarantee he wouldn't come to settle accounts with her. If she could eliminate Lu Ye at this time, it would be tantamount to removing one of her biggest worries. How could Lu Yueme let go of such a good opportunity? This thought flashed through the minds of the two. But in the next moment, Lu Yi raised his blade and rushed towards Lu Yueme like a bolt of lightning. At the same time, Lu Yueme raised her hand and launched a series of spells at Lu Yi. At the same time, she quickly retreated. There was no exchange of words as both sides understood each other's intentions. This was destined to be a battle to the death. Lu Yueme came from a famous sect, and her aptitude was quite good. Her combat experience was extremely rich, so she naturally knew that as an artifact cultivator, what she feared the most was being approached by an artifact cultivator, even if the artifact cultivator's cultivation was far inferior to hers. Seeing so many exquisite secret techniques, Lu Yueme's heart sank. She expected that with the gap between their cultivations, once she used her secret techniques, Lu Yi would be flustered to deal with them. However, to her surprise, Lu Yi's saber technique was impenetrable, and the secret techniques she sent towards him were all shattered. Amidst the chaos, Lu Yi's figure rapidly approached her. How was this a second-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator? With the strength Lu Yi was showing now, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call him a fifth-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator. Chapter 1073. The killing intent in Lu Yueme's heart burned even more fiercely as she unleashed her spells. Lu Yi had always been famous for being able to kill enemies above his level. Judging from this brief exchange of blows, his reputation was indeed well-deserved. Therefore, she could not allow him to continue to grow. Otherwise, she would not be his opponent in a few years' time. With this thought in mind, Lu Yueme's attacks became even more ruthless. She did not have any intention of probing Lu Yi's strength at all. All of a sudden, the cracks in the ground were filled with spells that blotted out the sky and earth. Among them, there were a few thick thunderbolts that rumbled. The Heaven Yuan sect was a sect that produced many spell cultivators, especially those of the lightning element. This might have something to do with their sect's treasure, the destructive lightning spear. Among the many spells, the lightning element was the most violent. Its lethality was also the most terrifying. Compared to other elements, it was also the fastest. As soon as these bolts of lightning appeared, the clear sky exploded. Lu Yi's attack was immediately blocked. As the Pan Mountain Saber slashed apart the lightning, his entire body stiffened. Lightning quickly swam around the surface of his body. How could Lu Yueme miss such a good opportunity? More bolts of lightning shot towards Lu Yi. She was determined to kill him in one fell swoop. Lu Yi's hair stood on end. It was not because he was agitated by the lightning, but because he instinctively sensed danger. He rarely suffered in front of a spell cultivator. Even when he fought against Yu Daiwei last time, he was not at a disadvantage. But that battle was completely different from this one. Yu Daiwei did not have any intention of killing him. She was only following Tai Shan's orders to capture Lu Yi alive. So, although she fought fiercely with Lu Yi, she did not have the heart to fight to the death. Lu Yi also did not have the heart to fight at that time. That battle was purely to test his own strength. But this time, whether it was him or Lu Yueme, both of them had the intention of killing the other. The ferocity of their attacks was completely different from before. Thunder rolled over. Lu Yi's body was still a little stiff, so it was difficult for him to dodge such an attack. In a hurry, Hu Pe, who was crouching on his shoulder, let out a tiger roar and leaped out. His small body expanded in the wind, and in the blink of an eye, he revealed his true form. Demonic chi surged, and his ferocious aura soared to the sky. The lightning struck Hu Pe's body, instantly scorching Hu Pe's skin and flesh. Hu Pe shrank back to the size of a cat, and fell straight down the fissure. A hand reached out and scooped Hu Pe up. It was Lu Yi, who had recovered. He raised his hand and placed Hu Pe on his shoulder. Once again, he faced the storm of spells and charged forward. After suffering a loss, Lu Yi had become much more cautious. He avoided Lu Yueme's many spells as much as he could. If he couldn't avoid them, he would meet them with his saber. As for lightning spells, he wouldn't even touch them. Lightning spells were indeed violent and powerful, but they had a huge flaw, and that was that they weren't easy to control. Unlike other spells, where a spell cultivator could still control them slightly after casting them, lightning spells were cast out instantly. Because their speed was too fast, there was no way to control them. This gave Lu Yi room to dodge. Of course, One's eyesight had to be accurate, and one's movements had to be fast. Otherwise he would still be struck. The environment below the fissure was complex. If a true lake stage cultivator came here, they might be greatly affected when moving around. However, spiritual sea stage cultivators had spiritual sense to monitor them. Although they would be affected to a certain extent, it wasn't obvious. Two figures quickly swept through the fissure, one in front and one behind. Wherever they passed, the world energy around them would become chaotic. Lu Yi felt more and more that he lacked a way to quickly approach his enemy. Last time when he fought with Yu Daiwei, he had this feeling, and this time, it was even more so. If he could quickly approach his enemy, not to mention Lu Yuemei, who was only a 7th-order Divine Sea Stage cultivator, even if she was a 9th-order Divine Sea Stage cultivator, she would still be able to withstand a few slashes from his saber. If he was facing a spell cultivator of the same level, it would be too difficult for Lu Yi to get close. When a spell cultivator used their spells, their speed would be greatly affected, giving Lu Yi an opportunity to close in. But after returning to the 9 states, he had met 2 female spell cultivators, one 8th-order Divine Sea Stage, and the other 7th-order Divine Sea Stage cultivators. Their cultivations were far above his, and the gap between their cultivations couldn't be closed. This made it very difficult for him to get close to them. Lu Yi originally wanted to show weakness to his enemy, then launch a sudden attack to settle the score, but after fighting for less than 10 breaths, he gave up on this plan. Although Lu Yuemei was a woman, she was also a battle veteran. As a spell cultivator, she wouldn't easily give him an opportunity to get close to her. Moreover, as they fought, Lu Yi clearly felt a powerful aura awakening below the fissure. It was definitely a Divine Sea Realm insect race cultivator, who had probably been alarmed by the battle above. What was even more uncomfortable was that these powerful insect race cultivators were rapidly approaching from below. Once these insect race cultivators entered the battlefield, the situation would inevitably become chaotic. At that time, it would be difficult to kill Lu Yuemei. If Lu Yuemei escaped today, the fact that Li Taibai was his clone would inevitably be exposed. He couldn't continue fighting like this. He couldn't give Lu Yuemei a way out, nor could he give himself a way out. Since there were many things he couldn't do, he had to go all out. Lu Yi raised his hand and took out an object, poured his spirit energy into it, and threw it straight at Lu Yuemei. Lu Yuemei saw Lu Ye's movements and saw a ball of light quickly rushing towards her. She hurriedly urged her spirit techniques to meet it. Although she didn't know what Lu Yi had thrown at her, she still had her guard up. What surprised her was that all her spirit techniques had no effect. Hitting the ball of light was no different from hitting nothing. There was also an inexplicable force that descended from the sky and fell on her body, resonating with the ball of light. Only then did Lu Yuemei see what was inside the ball of light. The battle ring. How could she be unfamiliar with this thing? Thinking back to that day, when Lu Yi came to Shocking Wave Lake Pass to recruit Xiaoxinghe, he'd utilized the combat arena. In the end, it caused one of her capable subordinates to perish on the spot, causing her plans to fail. But she didn't expect that after 2 or 3 years, Lu Yi would summon the battle ring again. And this time, it was against her. In the battle arena, it was a fight to the death. There would always be only one person who could walk out alive. Lu Yuemei was furious. She admitted that Lu Yi's strength was amazing, and he had the foundation to kill enemies above his realm. This could be seen from the brief exchange just now, but there was also a limit to surpassing one's realm. What gave him such confidence that he dared to use the battle ring against her? The battle ring. There was no time to think about it. The light flashed and the figures of Lu Yi and Lu Yuemei both disappeared. The violent spirit energy fluctuations slowly subsided, but below the crack, the movements of Taoan and Rong Rong were getting louder and louder. A moment later, a large number of insects, led by many Divine Sea Realm insects, crawled out from the depths of the ground and swarmed out. In the space of the battle ring, as soon as Lu Yuemei appeared, she spread out her spirit sense and quickly locked onto Lu Ye's position. He was just a few dozen meters away from her, not much different from before she entered the battle ring. But the scene imprinted in her eyes startled her. because Lu Ye's appearance at the moment had changed greatly. His whole body was wrapped in rich qi and blood, and his whole body was blooming with blood-red light. His figure was obviously taller and more slender, and the breath on his body had become extremely strange, as if there were traces of the demonic beast spirit energy mixed in. But it was undeniable that at this moment, his breath had become extremely violent and oppressive. Looking carefully, there was an extra tail of spirit energy behind Lu Yi, and the word king was faintly discernible on his forehead. If someone who didn't know better saw this appearance, they would think that he was an incomplete demonic beast. But Lu Yueme knew that this was the Beast Tamer School's beast transformation secret technique. In the 9 regions, there were many schools, and the Beast Tamer School was only one of them. But the Beast Tamer School had always been in an awkward position, because their strength was completely dependent on the number and quality of the demonic beasts under their command. Moreover, because they placed too much emphasis on external forces, like the Yinshi school, they couldn't go too far on the road of cultivation. There were many low-level cultivators but very few strong ones. But this situation was broken a few years ago. In the Tianji treasury of the 9 regions, there were some jade slips about the supreme mysteries of the Beast Tamer School, and many Beast Tamer School cultivators regarded them as treasures. There were also Beast Tamer School cultivators in the Heavenly Yuan sect. So Lu Yueme wasn't completely unaware of these things. She knew that the strongest mystery of the Beast Tamer School was the beast transformation secret technique that could fuse with one's life source demonic beast. Lu Yi also cultivated the Beast Tamer School. This guy indeed had a demonic beast following him. Just now, that demonic beast even risked its life to protect its master, using its own body to block her lightning. It was reasonable for Lu Yi to cultivate the Beast Tamer School. But what Lu Yueme didn't expect was that this guy could actually use the beast transformation secret technique. This was something that many cultivators who majored in beast taming could not do. Many secret techniques had appeared in the Heavenly Secret Treasure Trove for several years, and basically all the cultivators of the Beast Taming School would buy a copy to study. However, up until now, how many people had been able to fuse with their own life beasts? At the very least, Lu Yueme had never heard of anyone who could do this. Today was the first time she had seen it. It was inconceivable that a weapon cultivator had cultivated the secret of the clone and displayed the strongest mystery of the Beast Tamer School. What kind of monstrous talent was this? Many thoughts flashed through her mind, but it didn't stop her from raising her hand to kill the enemy. It was still the endless power of the spell, maintaining a violent offensive. It had always been the only way for spell cultivators to kill the enemy. The enemy could block 1 or 2 spells, but as long as the rhythm of the attack was in the hands of the spell cultivator, then the enemy would always make mistakes. But with Lu Ye's actions, Lu Yueme was shocked. The moment the red light flashed, she almost lost sight of Lu Yi. Compared to before, Lu Ye's current speed could be described as skyrocketing. His movements and turns were also much more agile than before. This wasn't just due to the beast transformation, but also the support of the blood-stained spirit pattern. Since he had decided to go all out, he wouldn't hold back. Therefore, the moment he entered the battle stage, Lu Yi exploded a drop of essence blood, using the power of the essence blood to activate the blood-stained spirit pattern and beast transformation. It was the same as what he thought back in the blood refinement realm. The power of essence blood saved him a lot of time, so he didn't need to slowly accumulate power, and could directly activate his killer move. His body was like a swimming dragon as he rushed forward. Amber's tender voice sounded in his heart. Use me in the battle. Use me to be invincible. Please enter the latest update in your browser. Check it in the Essence Library. To provide you with the latest update of Great God, Momo's the Great Sage of Human Tao. In order to be able to check the latest update of this book next time, please keep your bookmark well. Chapter 1073, Beast Tamer School. Go all out to read for free. Chapter 1074. Shrouded in a blood-red light, Lu Ye's figure dashed forward like a wolf, dodging one technique after another, as he rapidly closed the distance between him and Lu Yueme. As he rushed forward, he sent out a series of saber waves, each of which was like a crescent moon, cutting through the void and attacking the enemy from various angles. Lu Yuemei gritted her teeth and madly pushed her spirit energy to cast a number of exquisite techniques, attacking Lu Yi to obstruct his advance while resisting the incoming saber waves. For a time, she was going all out. This was something she hadn't expected before she attacked. She had thought that there was a huge gap in strength between them, and even if Lu Yi had the reputation of being able to fight above his realm, it would at most take her some effort to defeat him. However, not long after the battle began, she was forced to go all out. The strength Lu Yi displayed made her have no choice but to treat him as an opponent on the same level. Both of them were defending and attacking at the same time, but one was retreating while the other was advancing. For a time, the area between the two was filled with techniques and saber waves, creating a lively atmosphere. However, Lu Yuemei knew that this environment was extremely disadvantageous for her, because this was the space of the battle stage. Although this space was barely enough for her to move around and display her skills, it was still limited and not as spacious as the outside world. Normally, when facing an opponent who was 5 minor realms lower in cultivation, Lu Yuemei could have easily used her divine sense to obstruct and interfere, perhaps even clinching victory with her divine sense attack. But at this moment, she could not afford to be distracted, because even if she went all out, the distance between them was rapidly closing. Lu Ye's movements were too fast, so fast that she could barely lock onto her opponent's aura with her divine sense. As he ran, this person was like a wild beast. His entire body exuded a violent aura. Even though her cultivation was higher, this kind of aura that wanted to devour everything still made her heart palpitate. She could only gamble that Lu Yi wouldn't be able to maintain this state for long. This also coincided with some of the drawbacks of cultivators using explosive means. Although they could gain more strength in a short time, they couldn't maintain it for long. A figure flashed in front of her as Lu Yi rushed forward. It had only been 5 breaths since they entered the battle stage. She was a 7th-order Divine Sea Dharma cultivator, yet an engineer realm weapon cultivator managed to get close to her. Although she had expected it, it was still too fast. Seeing Lu Ye's blade coming down, Lu Yuemei had no intention of dodging. At such a close distance, she might not be able to dodge, and even if she did, her aura would be weaker than her opponent's. What followed would be an endless pursuit, so she raised her hand and summoned an object. At the same time, she raised her other hand. Lightning swam between his 5 fingers. With a loud crack, the lightning surged. At the moment the Pan Mountain blade slashed down, Lu Yuemei's body was covered in a layer of dazzling light. It was a protective spiritual treasure that she had activated. This was a necessary defensive measure for magic cultivators. Their physical bodies were weaker than those of the other factions, so in terms of defense, they relied on external objects other than their own spells. A cultivator at Lu Yuemei's level naturally wielded a spirit treasure. Lu Ye's blade-wielding right arm swelled slightly for an instant. The color of the blood and qi on his arm became a bit denser than the rest of his body. The Pan Shan saber instantly slashed down. It looked like a single slash, but in reality, there were at least 7 or 8 slashes. Consecutive slashes. In such a situation, this simple technique was the most practical. It was even more practical than the Tyrant Saber technique. When the blade fell, a thick bolt of lightning also attacked him head-on. Having suffered a loss just now, Lu Yi naturally knew the power of this thunder attribute spell. But at such a close distance, there was no way he could dodge. So when the Pan Shan saber slashed down, several layers of defensive spirit runes appeared on his chest. When the cracking sound was heard, Lu Yuemei's expression changed. The protective light on her body caved in fiercely, its color instantly dimming. Extremely heavy, incomparably sharp. This was what Lu Yuemei felt when the long saber slashed down. One could imagine that if she hadn't activated her protective spiritual treasure in time, her weak body would have been split in 2. It was a saber that had chopped down, but what landed on his body was like a mountain with a sharp blade. This was an extremely contradictory feeling. As soon as the 2 figures came into contact, they were sent flying. Although Lu Yuemei's protective spiritual treasure blocked the violent attack, the power of the attack itself couldn't be dispelled. Lu Yi, on the other hand, was bombarded by the power of the lightning. The many layers of defensive spirit runes he had hurriedly erected were also shattered. This showed the terrifying power of the attack. Before it could be completely dispelled, lightning snakes slithered around his body in the air, covered by the blood-red light, causing his hair to stand on end. He lowered his body and slid back more than 100 feet before he could barely stabilize himself. Without any pause, he pounced on Lu Yuemei again. Behind him, waves of air exploded, visible to the naked eye. At the same time, many spell arts suddenly came crashing down on Lu Yuemei. Lu Yuemei turned pale with fright. She had no idea where these spell arts came from. At this moment her body was unstable. Under the huge impact, the blood in her chest was in turmoil. She could only activate her protective spiritual treasure. Many spell arts fell on her body, but they were all blocked by her protective spiritual treasure. She was not harmed in the slightest. Even the light around her body didn't dim. Finally stabilizing her body, Lu Yuemei glanced around and saw a young girl with a delicate figure and an ethereal temperament standing in the corner of the battle stage, urging her spell arts to attack her. Who is this? Where did she come from? Lu Yuemei couldn't be blamed for being blind. After entering the battle stage, all her attention had been focused on Lu Yi. What's more, she didn't expect that there would be a third party inside the battle stage. This was completely illogical. The battle stage was a unique treasure, and only the person who activated it, and those who were implicated would be dragged into this space. It was absolutely impossible for others to enter, because this was a spatial battlefield that had been opened up by the unfathomable mysteries of heaven. In the 9 provinces, who could be stronger than Heaven Ji? To her, this young girl's cultivation wasn't high, only true Lake Realm 6th or 7th order. Normally, she could easily destroy such an enemy, and the other party's attacks wouldn't be able to harm her. But at this moment, her enemy was Lu Yi, and the sudden appearance of such a variable gave her a headache. It was only natural that Yi would appear on the battle stage. Lu Yi had activated his beastification secret technique and merged with Hu Pe, so Yi naturally left his body. She was smart enough to hide at the first opportunity, not making a move at all. She knew that with her own strength, she wouldn't be able to play a decisive role in a battle like this. So, she only made a move at the critical moment to harass Lu Yuemei. The effect was remarkable. Even if the spell arts she used didn't cause any harm to Lu Yuemei, just distracting Lu Yuemei for a moment was a great help to Lu Yi. The most obvious result was that Lu Yi instantly approached within 10 meters of Lu Yuemei. The same scene repeated itself as before. Both of them activated their spells and saber auras. Lu Yi's figure moved, and Lu Yuemei retreated quickly. However, they could only watch as the distance between them narrowed. This time, they were closing in even faster than before. Although the battle didn't last long, Lu Yi had slowly adapted to his increased speed and strength, and was also slowly adapting to Lu Yuemei's attack rhythm. This was very dangerous for a magic attribute cultivator. While Lu Yi was running, Yi didn't remain idle either. She continued to use her spell arts to attack Lu Yuemei from afar, not hoping to achieve much, but simply to distract Lu Yuemei and consume some of her strength. Lu Yi closed in again and slashed down with his saber, causing the light protecting Lu Yuemei's body to dim. Even if it was a spirit artifact, in the end, it was still an inanimate object and had a limit to how much it could withstand. Lu Yi's current saber strike was so terrifying that such a spirit artifact could block it once, twice, or even 3 times, but it absolutely couldn't block his endless attacks. The 2 figures were sent flying again. A trace of panic flashed across Lu Yuemei's eyes, and she no longer had the confidence she had before. She suddenly realized that if the situation continued to develop like this, the situation would become very bad for her. Her spirit artifact wouldn't last much longer. Perhaps it would shatter under the next blow, or perhaps even the next. Once her spirit artifact shattered and Lu Yi closed in on her, the consequences would be unimaginable. Although she still had other spirit artifacts she could use, how many slashes could they withstand from Lu Ye's saber? Such a terrifying saber strike wasn't something a second-order Divine Sea Realm weapon cultivator could wield. She had to break this stalemate before that happened. She couldn't let her opponent continue to display his strengths. A trace of sorrow surged from the depths of her heart. She never thought that one day she would be forced to this extent by a weapon cultivator, whose cultivation was 5 minor realms lower than hers. They were both cultivators, so how could he be so monstrous? Before the battle began, she realized that she couldn't let Lu Yi continue to grow, because sooner or later, he would have the strength to threaten her. And with his terrifying cultivation speed, it wouldn't be long before that happened. But after the battle began, she realized that this person already had the strength to threaten her. If they were in the outside world, she would have already fled. Even if there was only the slightest risk, she would still prioritize her own safety. But this was the battle stage, an enclosed environment. The you die, I die rule cut off all her delusions. Since that was the case, she would fight to the death. Lu Yuemei's offensive suddenly weakened, making it easier for Lu Yi to rush forward. He instinctively felt that there was a trap, because the battle had only been going on for 30 breaths. Lu Yuemei, a 7th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator, shouldn't have weakened so quickly. Such a change was clearly intentional. She was pretending to be weak to the enemy. He was sure that Lu Yuemei was scheming something, but he didn't know what she wanted to do. He didn't have time to think too much. In a life-or-death battle, hesitation was the most taboo. Using 2 of his trump cards at the same time consumed a lot of his strength, so he had to end this battle quickly. The longer it dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for him. Please enter the latest update in your browser. Go to the Essence Book Pavilion to view, providing you with the latest update of Great God Momo's Human Race Great Sage. In order to be able to view the latest updates of this book next time, please be sure to keep your bookmark well. Chapter 1074 Battle Stage, You Die I Live read for free. Chapter 1075. Lu Yi didn't act like before. Since he sensed that Lu Yuemei was deliberately showing weakness, he naturally kept an eye out. He raised his saber and stabbed forward. The entire battle stage seemed to darken for a moment. Then dazzling starlight fell, each of which was a sharp saber light. When the starlight fell, the protective spiritual light on Lu Yuemei's body fluctuated violently and suddenly shattered. However, she had clearly expected this. So when this layer of protective spiritual light shattered, a different layer of protective spiritual light appeared. She had already used her second protective spiritual treasure. As the light was dense, strands of lightning suddenly swam from the surface of her body, turning into a huge ball of lightning in the blink of an eye. The ball of lightning suddenly exploded and spread out with lightning speed. In an instant, the area within a radius of 300 feet turned into a pool of lightning. Lightning interweaved within it like a swarm of dancing snakes. When he saw the lightning surging out of Lu Yuemei's body, Lu Yi realized that something was wrong. In addition, he was prepared, so after stabbing out with his saber, he wanted to withdraw. However, no matter how fast he was, he couldn't be faster than the lightning power. The pool of lightning spread out and drowned him. His entire body trembled like a sieve, and the mountain plate saber in his hand almost slipped out of his hand. He wanted to escape the range of the lightning pool, but under the corrosion of the lightning power, his body couldn't move smoothly. It was as if he had become a marionette, his movements stiff. The lethality of Lu Yuemei's lightning pool secret technique this time was much weaker than before, but the constantly slithering lightning snakes were a huge hindrance to Lu Ye's movements, making him feel as if he had fallen into a swamp. The enemy was targeting him like this to limit his speed. What followed next would probably be a storm of attacks. However, when he looked up and saw the scene, Lu Yi couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Because Lu Yuemei's current state was actually the same as his. Her movements were halting, as if she was another marionette. Lu Yi immediately understood that this lightning pool secret technique not only affected him, but also Lu Yuemei. No wonder she hadn't used it. This clearly wasn't because Lu Yuemei's cultivation wasn't good enough, but because the secret technique itself was strange. Then, he saw a fierce glint in Lu Yuemei's eyes. Immediately after, the power of her divine spirit fluctuated wildly. In his field of vision, Lu Yuemei turned into a beam of light and rushed toward him at an incredible speed. She crashed into his head, and it was as if an invisible sledgehammer had smashed into his head. Lu Yi couldn't help but take a step back. Lu Yi hurriedly stabilized his body. His body sank slightly as he fixed himself in place. He finally knew what Lu Yuemei wanted to do. This woman actually wanted to have a battle of souls with him. She'd obviously realized that if she were to continue fighting like that in the space of the combat arena, there was a high chance that she'd perish. Thus, she'd played to her strengths and avoided her weaknesses, and forced herself to fight it out with her soul. The lightning pool was only used to restrict her movements, so that it would be easier for her to use her soul's secret technique. The figure of Lu Yuemei that he had seen earlier was not her physical body, but her soul. That was why it had crashed into his mind. It had to be said that Lu Yuemei had made an extremely wise choice, and was extremely decisive. This was the shrewdness of a battle veteran. In a contest of physical strength, Lu Yuemei couldn't gain the slightest advantage, and was even at a disadvantage. If she continued fighting like this, her chances of winning were very small. Naturally, she wouldn't take this risk. Since she couldn't win in a physical contest, she would open up a battlefield with her soul. Her thinking was very simple. No matter how strong Lu Yi's foundation was, he was still just a second-order divine sea cultivator. She might not be able to crush Lu Yi with her physical body, but her soul shouldn't be a problem, right? This was the self-confidence of a seventh-order divine sea cultivator. Of course, making such a decision also showed her courage. Although there were clashes between divine sea realm cultivators, such a direct battle between divine sea realm cultivators was extremely rare. This was because such a battle was far more dangerous than a normal battle. A single mistake could cause damage to the divine sea realm cultivators, divine sea realm cultivators, divine sea realm cultivators, divine sea realm cultivators, divine sea realm. As she expected, Lu Yi's soul defense wasn't too strong, so it didn't take her much effort to break through it, and her soul rushed into Lu Yi's soul sea. At a glance, she was slightly surprised because the scale of this soul sea was much larger than the second-order divine sea cultivator she knew. What a monster! Not only is his physical foundation so strong, but his soul sea is also far superior to others in the same realm. Suppressing these distracting thoughts, Lu Yuemei raised her hand and sent out a series of sharp attacks towards Lu Yi's soul sea. In an instant, the calm sea became calm and turbulent. Fighting a soul battle in someone else's soul sea had its advantages and disadvantages. The advantage was that she could act unscrupulously, and any soul secret technique she used would damage her opponent's soul sea. The disadvantage was that her own soul couldn't be effectively replenished. On the other hand, because the enemy had the home field advantage, as long as their soul sea didn't break, they would have an endless supply of spiritual energy. Lu Yuemei had cultivated for many years, and had broken through to the divine sea realm many years ago. Although she hadn't experienced this kind of soul battle many times, she was still much more experienced than Lu Yi. As such, she immediately set out to destroy Lu Yi's soul sea. She knew that the fiercer her offensive was, the more difficult it would be for her opponent. While she was stirring up trouble, in the center of her soul sea, a soul avatar suddenly appeared. It was none other than Lu Yi, who had immersed himself in his soul avatar. As soon as he saw Lu Yuemei's actions, he flew into a rage. In a flash, he rushed towards Lu Yuemei. As he moved forward, his mind moved slightly, and pillars of water gushed out from his spirit sea and attacked Lu Yuemei. That was the counterattack of his own spiritual power. Lu Yuemei didn't have any intention of evading, and simply continued to push her spiritual energy, turning it into a series of slashes that cut through the water pillars. Even Lu Yi's soul avatar was shaken by her attacks. If it weren't for the fact that he was in his home field, and could easily replenish his soul avatar would likely have been shattered. This was the rhythm of a battle. Lu Yuemei laughed sarcastically, Lu Yi, today you will die. 1. Lu Yi remained silent, his face gloomy. 1 inch his own home field. His enemy had actually dared to show off her strength like this. This was simply unjustifiable. Lu Yi felt as if a bandit had broken into his home, not only robbing him of his belongings, but also taunting him. But there was nothing he could do about this. In the end, he had only reached the Divine Sea realm half a year ago, and had never had the experience of fighting with another soul avatar before. This was the first time he had experienced something like this, so it was a bit strange. Moreover, in such a battle, he couldn't display the full strength of his mortal body. When he could only continue to rush towards Lu Yuemei, at the same time mobilizing the strength of his divine sea to turn into massive waves that swept towards her, hoping to do something. Everything he did was useless. Whether it was himself or the massive waves of his divine sea, they were all intercepted by Lu Yuemei. Although the situation was embarrassing, he didn't panic. This was because his divine sea had the soul pagoda suppressing it. So even if his spiritual energy was exhausted, his life wouldn't be in danger. Unless Lu Yuemei had the ability to break through the soul pagoda and completely destroy his divine sea. But the soul pagoda was a soul artifact, so how could it be so easy to break through? Moreover, Lu Yuemei was fighting in a way battle, so there was no way for her to replenish her spiritual energy. Once her attacks weakened, this crisis would be resolved. But this kind of battle really made him feel aggrieved. In the end, he was a weapon cultivator. Fighting with his bare hands like this, he really had no place to use his strength. At this moment, if only he had a saber in his hand. As this thought flashed through his mind, Lu Yi suddenly thought of something, and his figure that was rushing towards Lu Yuemei stopped in place. Lu Yuemei sensed this and raised her hand, sending many slashes towards Lu Ye's soul avatar. But along the way, she was blocked by layers of water curtains, so she couldn't use her full strength. These layers of water curtains were all manifestations of spiritual energy. Every time a layer was broken, it meant that Lu Ye's spiritual energy was consumed. Once the consumption was too great, it would be extremely disadvantageous for Lu Yi. As they attacked and defended, Lu Yuemei suddenly felt a sense of unease in her heart. But where this feeling came from was vague. L10, and now that she was in the middle of a fight, she didn't have time to think too much. The spiritual energy slashes were endless, breaking through layer after layer of water curtains. Then, Lu Yuemei keenly sensed that something was not very coordinated. The new layer of water curtains that rose closest to her actually took the initiative to separate from the left and right. The next moment, Lu Ye's soul avatar rushed out. Lu Yuemei coldly snorted and instantly sent out spiritual energy slashes, one after another, with an aggressive momentum. She had dealt with Lu Ye's soul avatar in this way just now. Every time, Lu Yi was beaten so badly that he could only dodge. However, this time, Lu Yi was different from his usual self and didn't dodge. Saber light suddenly swept out, breaking all of Lu Yuemei's spiritual energy slashes. Where did this saber light come from? Lu Yuemei was startled, and when she looked over, she couldn't be more shocked. It was because Lu Yi was holding a saber in his hand at this moment, and that saber looked so familiar. It was his magic weapon saber. How could a magic weapon saber be brought into the Divine Sea? Or was the magic weapon saber itself a soul weapon? But this was too ridiculous. A magic weapon was a magic weapon, and a soul weapon was a soul weapon. It was impossible to mix them up. Many thoughts flashed through Lu Yuemei's mind, but she really couldn't understand how to explain the change in front of her. Of course she was confused because the saber in Lu Ye's hand wasn't the Panshan saber. Although the Panshan saber was a top-grade magic weapon, it couldn't be brought into the Divine Sea. Lu Yi was holding the soul-severing saber. However, because of the soul-severing saber's uniqueness, it transformed into the Panshan saber's appearance. To Lu Yi, this was the saber he was most familiar with, and could maximize his strength as much as possible. Just now, he was lamenting that he didn't have a saber in his hand, and then he thought of the soul-severing saber. However, as soon as he obtained the soul-severing saber, he fused it with the Panshan saber, resulting in the upgrade of the Panshan saber. Thus, he had a misconception, and didn't think of bringing the soul-severing saber into the divine sea. Since this idea had arisen, after a little testing, he smoothly brought the soul-severing saber into the divine sea. 2. Please enter the latest update in your browser and view it in the Essence library. To provide you with the latest update of Great God Momo's Human Tao Great Sage, please save your bookmark so that you can read the latest update in the future. Chapter 1075, Soul-Severing Saber Soul Strife is free to read. Chapter 1076. Now that he had this saber in hand, Lu Yi felt that his whole body had mellowed, and he was no longer as powerless as before. Being on his Divine Sea Realm's home turf, Lu Yi's soul body arrived in front of Lu Yuemei almost instantly. Before Lu Yuemei had time to recover from the shock on her face, a saber light slashed towards her. In a hurry, she could only push her strength to protect herself. She had cultivated a soul secret technique, so she had both offensive and defensive means. The external manifestation of this was a barrier in front of her. As the saber fell, the barrier burst like a bubble. Lu Yuemei's face changed drastically as she finally determined that the saber in Lu Ye's hand was a soul artifact, and an extremely good one at that. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for it to cause such obvious damage to her soul defense. Clenching her teeth, Lu Yuemei was filled with unwillingness. Her strategy had not been wrong. Unable to gain the upper hand in terms of physical strength, she had even fallen into a disadvantage, so she could only compete with her soul. It turned out that her soul was indeed much stronger than Lu Ye's, but she never expected that Lu Ye, a second-order Divine Sea cultivator, would have such a powerful soul artifact. That was a soul artifact. Even she, a seventh-order Divine Sea cultivator, did not have one. How could Lu Ye have one? But considering the heritage of Blue Blood sect and its current situation, it wasn't strange for Tang Yifeng to bestow a soul artifact to protect himself. She naturally attributed the origin of the soul-splitting saber to Blue Blood sect, which was also reasonable. With her soul defense broken, the soul-splitting saber still fell straight down. Lu Yuemei hurriedly retreated, but the saber light was like a maggot in her bones, unable to escape. On top of that, this was Lu Ye's home turf. In terms of speed, she couldn't be faster than Lu Yi, which was the biggest drawback of an away battle. The mountain-ascending saber struck Lu Yuemei's soul body, causing her to scream, as if she had suffered great pain. At the same time, a soul attack also fell on Lu Ye's body. It was indeed very painful. His soul avatar immediately felt like it was being torn apart. There was no blood flowing out of the wound. After all, it was a soul avatar, so only spiritual energy was escaping through the wound. However, Lu Yi could replenish his spiritual energy at any time, so it only took a moment for his wounds to heal. Lu Yuemei didn't have such convenience. Just as she recovered from the intense pain, Lu Yi once again raised her sword and slashed at her. Unable to defend or evade, Lu Yuemei screamed even more miserably after being stabbed a second time. The pain in her soul was not something an ordinary person could endure. This time, Lu Yuemei's instinctive counterattack was narrowly avoided by Lu Yi, leaving him unharmed. After being stabbed twice, Lu Yuemei knew that she couldn't continue like this. She couldn't help but want to retreat. She wanted to escape. Lu Yi saw her actions, so how could she let her do as she pleased? She had inexplicably run into his spirit sea and run amok. Now that she had sensed that something was wrong, she wanted to escape. How could there be such a good thing in this world? He raised his hand and pressed it down. Then he suddenly raised his hand and shouted, "Up!" The seawater below suddenly began to boil. Then, a tall tower rose into the air and hovered above the divine sea. Spurred on by Lu Ye's spiritual energy, the tower shook and suddenly expanded outwards. In the blink of an eye, the huge tower passed over Lu Yi and Lu Yuemei, and enveloped the entire divine sea, turning it into a cage. Lu Yuemei slammed into the tower's wall, and desperately discovered that she couldn't break through the tower's protection. In other words, she was trapped. Her eyes trembling violently, Lu Yuemei stared at the huge tower that covered the entire divine sea, her heart filled with bitterness. Another soul artifact. And it was a defensive soul artifact. Blue blood sect. Sure enough, even a dead tiger would not fall. It wasn't until this moment that she realized that she had made an extremely wrong choice. If she hadn't started a battle of souls, and only fought Lu Yi with her spirit techniques, she might have had a chance to turn the tables. But when she decided to take the risk of starting a battle of souls, her fate was already sealed. She was also a treacherous little thief. He clearly had such a defensive soul artifact, but he didn't use it when she invaded his spirit sea, only activating it when she wanted to escape. If he had this tower to protect her when she tried to invade his spirit sea, she would never have succeeded. Lu Yueme had misunderstood Lu Yi. Although he had obtained the soul-suppressing tower for a long time, he was only at the true lake realm when he obtained it. Although he had a spiritual sense soul avatar, it was still different from a true spirit sea realm cultivator. He wasn't too clear about the full power of the soul-suppressing tower, and only thought that it was used to suppress his spirit sea and protect it from being broken. This fierce battle with Lu Yueme allowed him to discover another ability of the soul-suppressing tower, which was to seal off his spirit sea. With the soul-suppressing tower as a cage, and Lu Yi holding the saber in his hand, Lu Yueme knew that her chances of survival were slim, and her panicked expression calmed down. Asterisk dong dong dong. Asterisk a rhythmic sound rang out from the depths of her heart. She looked up and saw Lu Yi walking over step by step, neither fast nor slow. The thumping sound was the sound of his footsteps landing on the ground. Lu Yi raised the soul-severing saber and pointed it at Lu Yueme. Lu Yi calmly said, "Come, let's fight to the death." As soon as she finished speaking, Lu Yueme had already activated her spiritual energy slash. Lu Yi rushed forward, cutting off the numerous incoming attacks before slashing his saber down on Lu Yueme's soul body. Lu Yueme had been struck twice before, causing her to scream miserably, but now that she was in a desperate situation, she only let out a muffled groan and refused to cry out. In this battle, no matter what, only one person could survive, so any begging for mercy or showing weakness was meaningless. This had already been decided the moment Lu Yi summoned the battle stage. Although she knew that she could no longer control life and death, at the very least, she could allow herself to walk a little more calmly. In front of a young second-order divine sea cultivator, he had no choice but to lose face. Slash after slash, Lu Yueme's soul body continued to dim. By the time Lu Yi passed by her, Lu Yueme's originally solid soul body had become extremely illusory, like a candle in the wind that could be extinguished at any moment. She grit her teeth and uttered a final vicious curse. "Even if I become a ghost, I won't let you go." Her remaining strength fluctuated wildly, and her illusory soul body became unstable, showing signs of collapse. She would die, but she would never die at the hands of a junior like Lu Yi. Suicide was her last shred of faith and perseverance. Lu Yi, who had his back to her, turned around and slashed his soul-splitting saber across her soul body's neck, causing a small crack to appear. Lu Yueme's expression suddenly twisted. She never expected that Lu Yi would not even leave her with this last shred of face. Her expression was vicious, and she seemed to want to say something, but her soul body had already collapsed, turning into specks of light and disappearing. Lu Yi quietly looked in the direction she disappeared, not feeling the joy of killing a strong enemy. In the end, Lu Yueme and he were cultivators from the same camp. Not to mention the same camp. After 2 years in the blood-refining world, he didn't have much killing intent towards unrelated myriad demon-rich cultivators. Why did they have to fight each other to the death? In the blood-refining world, there were many old seniors who came from different camps. They could peacefully coexist, persisting in their efforts towards a common goal. Yet they never fought each other. Although he had such thoughts, he didn't agree with Tai Shan's ideas. In his opinion, Tai Shan's ideas were unreliable. How could a grudge that had persisted for thousands of years be resolved by creating a new camp? In this world, there might be many people like him who were tired of the endless struggle between the two camps. But when one was involved, there were always many things that were beyond one's control. Of course, although killing Lu Yueme didn't bring him any joy, it didn't bring him any sorrow. This accidental encounter was originally a life or death struggle. It could only be said that this was a messy account. He came here this time to refine an avatar, but he ended up bumping into Lu Yueme. And after learning that Li Taibai was Lu Ye's avatar, Lu Yueme's killing intent rose. If others wanted to kill him, he would certainly fight back. He couldn't use his own life to help others. Since he wanted to fight back, he had to be thorough. So he lived and Lu Yueme died. It was that simple. It could be considered as revenge for that day. Back when he went to Startling Waves Lake Pass to conscript 3rd senior apprentice brother Xiaoxinghe, Lu Yueme chased after him, without regard for her status. If he hadn't activated the golden body medallion to protect her, she would have most likely died. Lu Yi remembered this debt. With a thought, Lu Yi hurriedly dispersed his consciousness. The next moment his consciousness returned. The space of the battle stage was rapidly collapsing. Now that life and death had been determined, the space of the battle stage naturally couldn't be maintained. Lu Yueme was still standing nearby, but she was no longer breathing. Lu Yi hurriedly dispelled the beast transformation technique and shouted, "E! E!" E flashed over and disappeared into Hu Po's body. Hu Po looked somewhat exhausted. This was the after effect of using beast transformation every time. Not to mention Hu Po. Even Lu Yi himself had expended a great deal of energy. It wasn't just the consumption of his physical foundation, but also his spirit. However, as long as his foundation wasn't damaged, he could recover after a period of rest. The space collapsed. The next moment, Lu Yi appeared in the previous fissure. He frowned because he was surrounded by insectoids from all directions, and there was no lack of powerful divine sea realm insectoids among them. Before summoning the battle stage, Lu Yi had sensed the abnormality of the insectoids beneath the fissure. That was why he decisively summoned the battle stage, so that the insectoids wouldn't interfere with his battle with Lu Yueme. Now that the battle was over, although it hadn't been long, the number of insectoids swarming out was unusually large. As soon as he appeared, he was completely surrounded by insectoids. The insectoids with low intelligence naturally didn't expect a human to suddenly appear here. However, they didn't think too much about it, and instinctively launched an attack on Lu Yi. Lu Yi brandished his saber, and was about to break out of the encirclement. He had expended too much energy at the moment, so it wasn't suitable for him to stay here any longer. However, before he could do anything, a woman's voice came from afar. "Li Taibai, where are you?" Lin Yu had actually found him. Please enter the latest update in your browser. Check it in the Essence Library, providing you with the latest update of Great God Momo's The Great Sage Human Race. In order for you to be able to check the latest update of this book next time, please keep your bookmark well. Chapter 1076, Battle Stage Lu Yueme's Death for free reading. Chapter 1077. Lin Yu wouldn't appear here for no reason. Since she could call out Li Taibai's name, she must have received some news. This wasn't surprising. When Lu Yi and Lu Yueme first fought in the fissure, the commotion was quite big. Otherwise, it wouldn't have attracted the attention of the underground insect race. If there were cultivators nearby, they should have noticed. Some myriad Demon Ridge cultivators probably noticed the battle here, and passed the news to Lin Yu. Lin Yu was worried about his safety, so she came to investigate. She was a thoughtful person, but facing Lu Yi was a bit awkward. He couldn't meet Lin Yu face to face. After all, they were on different sides. Should he fight or not? If it was under normal circumstances, he could just hide and wait for Lin Yu to leave. But now there were insect race cultivators everywhere, so he couldn't hide at all. He could only activate the 1,000-face mask and transform into Li Taibai's appearance. During the fierce battle, he put on the Scarlet Dragon battle robe, hung the sword gourd on his waist, put away the mountain coiling saber, and put the amber into his spirit beast bag. After a series of actions, he was surrounded by insect race cultivators from all directions. Several divine sea realm insect race cultivators were eyeing him. With a flash of sword light, sword chi overflowed, and cleared a large vacuum in an instant. Insect blood and severed limbs scattered everywhere. Lu Yi rushed up and rushed out of the fissure in a few breaths. Not far away, a figure was besieged by insect race cultivators. It was Lin Yu. Although she was a 7th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator, the same as Lu Yueme, the number and quality of the insect race cultivators that appeared this time were far greater than before. This was also the reason why she couldn't enter the fissure to search for Li Taibai. Fortunately, she could rely on her own cultivation to hold on. Hearing the sound of a sword, she turned her head and saw a familiar figure at a glance. She was overjoyed and called out, "Li Taibai." Lu Yi greeted her and soon met up with her. "Let's go," Lu Yi called out. He had consumed too much energy and didn't want to stay here and fight with the insect race. What he needed to do now was recover and adjust his breathing. Lin Yu followed his advice, and the two immediately turned around and rushed towards the Dark Moon Forest Pass. Suddenly, they broke out of the encirclement. Many insect race cultivators behind them, but they were quickly shaken off. The path ahead was still blocked by insectoids, but they did not pose much of a threat. Flying through the air, Lu Yi looked down with a frown. All he could see were insectoids of various shapes and sizes. It could be said that this was a sizable insectoid tide, and there was still an endless stream of insectoids pouring out from the fissure he had escaped from, increasing the size of the insectoid tide. In the past 2 years in the 9 regions, there had been countless insect swarms of all sizes in various regions. They had all crawled out from different cracks in the ground. Moreover, the insect race was extremely sensitive to spiritual energy fluctuations. Therefore, as long as they gathered into a tide, they would inevitably swarm towards the gathering place of the human race. Their current location was in the middle of the Dark Moon Forest Pass and the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. They were slightly closer to the Dark Moon Forest Pass. One could foresee that the insect tide would definitely cause a certain degree of impact to the two passes. What the cultivators at the 2 mountain passes had to do was to defend against the insectoid swarm and exterminate the insectoids. Lin Yu was already arranging for the cultivators of the Demon's Ridge to return. It was difficult for an individual to fight against such a large insect tide, even for cultivators of the Spirit Sea Realm. They could only defend the mountain pass and rely on the fortifications there to resist the enemy. The Dark Moon Forest Pass had experienced this many times, so he knew how to deal with it. After sending out messages, Lin Yu finally had time to talk to Lu Yi. "Junior brother Taibai, were you fighting with Lu Yueme before?" Lu Yi knew that she would ask about the smoke, and had already thought about it. So he replied, "That's right." There was no way to deny it. Within a radius of 1,000 kilometers, there were only 3 Spirit Sea Realm cultivators. Some Demon's Ridge cultivators had already noticed the fluctuations of a battle between Spirit Sea Realm cultivators and reported it to Lin Yu. Lin Yu was not a fool. She would not have come to find him. Moreover, Lu Yueme's death had to have a place. Lin Yu could not help but be shocked. Where is she? Just now, she only saw Lu Yi rushing out from the crack in the ground. There was no trace of Lu Yueme at all. "She's dead," Lu Yi said concisely. Lin Yu was even more shocked. Her expression changed. How did she die? It was not that she had any friendship with Lu Yueme, but they were both 7th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivators. Moreover, she was weaker than Lu Yueme. If there was any danger that could kill Lu Yueme, it could also take her life. She had to be careful. Lu Yi naturally would not say that he was the one who killed her. Not to mention whether Lin Yu would believe him or not. Even if she did, there were many things that could not be explained. He simply said, "She was attacked by the insect race during the battle and died." In any case, Lu Yueme did die in the crack in the ground, and there were so many insect race cultivators. It was just right to push the blame to the insect race. In the past 2 years, there had been many Spirit Sea Realm cultivators who had died at the hands of the insect race. There were many 8th or 9th order Divine Sea Realm cultivators among them. There were also powerful existences among the insect race. Lin Yu could not help but feel a little absent-minded. Lin Yu had been guarding the Dark Moon Forest Pass for more than 10 years, and Lu Yueme had also been guarding the Shocking Waves Lake Pass for a long time. Both of them were female cultivators with similar age and strength. It could be said that they had crossed swords many times and regarded each other as their opponents. This was also the reason why the Myriad Demon Ridge had Lin Yu guard the Dark Moon Forest Pass, and Grand Heaven Alliance had Lu Yueme guard the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. The two women had crossed swords for many years, and it could be said that they knew each other well. With the two of them guarding one side, their camps could rest assured, and there would not be any major mistakes. However, they did not expect that the opponent they had been entangled with for so many years would die just like that. Lin Yu suddenly felt a little emotional. She did not know the meaning of their rivalry all these years. On the way back, they did not see a single person. The Myriad Demon Ridge had received instructions from Lin Yu, so they naturally returned to the Dark Moon Forest Pass early and made preparations to guard the pass. On the walls of the pass, many defensive fortifications were ready. They were waiting for the insect race to attack, so that they could kill them all. Junior brother Tai Bai, you should rest first. I don't think the insect race will spread here within a day, Lin Yu said. The main reason was that she could sense that Lu Yi had expended a lot of energy. The battle was imminent, and he was the only Divine Ocean Realm cultivator under him. Naturally, she had to take good care of him. Lu Yi did not say much, and walked towards his residence. After entering, he sat down cross-legged, and consumed a spiritual pill to recover his energy. Although he had no choice but to return to the Dark Moon Forest Pass, he had experienced it once before. Hence, it was not difficult for him to escape. He just had to find an opportunity. However, he had other worries, and that was whether or not the Shocking Waves Lake Pass would be able to block this bug tide. Lu Yueme was killed by him. The Shocking Waves Lake Pass could be said to be a group of dragons without a leader. More importantly, they probably did not know that their pass master was dead. Currently, there were only a few Cloud River Realm and True Lake Realm cultivators guarding the pass. If the scale of the insect race was too large, the Shocking Waves Lake Pass might not be able to hold on without a Divine Ocean Realm cultivator guarding it. Another point was that Lin Yu had sent a message to the Dark Moon Forest Pass, summoning all the Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators who were out and making preparations to guard the pass. However, there was no one at the Shocking Waves Lake Pass to remind them. Although he knew that the insect race was coming, he could not rush over to warn them. He could only hope that they would be able to detect it as soon as possible and deal with it as soon as possible. They were all accomplished cultivators and not children. There were many things that could not be completely relied on. Each of them should take responsibility. As time passed, Lu Yi slowly recovered. Suddenly, there was an intense wave of spiritual energy coming from outside, accompanied by a buzzing sound. The entire pass was shaking. Lu Yi hurriedly pushed open the door and rushed out. His body swayed, and he flew to the top of the pass's wall. Looking up, his heart sank. In his vision, there were insect race figures everywhere. There were insects crawling on the ground and flying in the air. The scale of this insect race was much larger than he had imagined. The closest insectoids were only 1.5 kilometers away from the mountain pass. At this moment, the many fortifications on the mountain pass were unleashing their powers. Through the activation of the formations, attacks were launched toward the insectoids. Every time a vacuum was created, it would be quickly filled by new insectoids. Little Pass Master. A few cultivators saw him appear and bowed in unison. Lu Yi glanced over. Among them, Wu Ji squeezed out a smile, feeling inexplicably nervous. Although this Little Pass Lord had been in the Dark Moon Forest Pass for more than 3 months, and had interacted with him many times, Wu Ji did not know why, but every time he saw this Little Pass Lord, he would feel a little flustered. The Little Pass Master had never made things difficult for him. Moreover, they were about the same age, and Wu Ji was even older. He did not know where this invisible pressure came from. He could only attribute it to the pressure unique to the Spirit Sea realm. Go do what you need to do, Lu Yi said. The few people felt as if they had been pardoned, and quickly worked together to activate the Spirit Array, activating the power of the Spirit Artifact placed in the Array Eye. Lin Yu flashed over and smiled. I haven't congratulated Junior Brother for reaching the second order. When she returned yesterday, she had noticed Lu Ye's breakthrough. However, she had been busy defending the Heart Pass and did not have the time to mention it. It's only the second order. There is still a big gap between me and senior sister. Lu Yi nodded lightly. Lin Yu laughed. You've only been cultivating for a short time, yet you've already reached the second order Divine Sea Realm. I'm afraid that in a few years, your cultivation will surpass mine. When that time comes, don't despise senior sister for being stupid. Senior sister, what are you saying? Ing Wu Ji and the others were busy with the task at hand, so the conversation between the two Spirit Sea Realm cultivators went into their ears. What does senior sister think about this insect tide? Lu Yi changed the topic. The scale is very large. It can be said to be the largest insect tide we've encountered in the past 2 years. Lin Yu's expression became serious. If the mountain pass was at its peak, it wouldn't be difficult to stop this insect tide. However, Junior Brother also knows that many people in the mountain pass have been transferred away. Not only the Dark Moon Forest Pass, but also the other mountain passes of both camps. Therefore, if we want to stop this insect tide, we have to work together. Most importantly, they had to find a way to kill the Spirit Sea Realm insects in the insect tide, in order to reduce the pressure on the pass. I understand, Lu Yi nodded. Lin Yu hesitated. Actually, I'm not too worried about our side. I'm more worried about Shocking Waves Lake Pass right now. This site's latest domain name. Chapter 1078. This kind of thing would never happen in the past. The two camps were opposing each other with deep hatred. The more unlucky the enemy was, the happier they would be. However, times had changed. There was actually a day where they had to worry about the enemy's situation. Life was unpredictable. The two mountain passes were 500 kilometers apart from each other, which was equivalent to 2 bright lamps in the wilderness. The insects were attracted to them like moths to a flame. If one of the lamps was extinguished, the other lamp would have to bear a lot of pressure. It would not be an exaggeration to say that the relationship between them would be interdependent if the lips were gone. Lin Yu was also worried about what Lu Yi was worried about. She did not know if the Shocking Waves Lake Pass had discovered Lu Yueme's death. She did not know if they had sent a message to ask for help. The situation was completely different when there was a Spirit Sea Realm warrior guarding a mountain pass, and when there was no Spirit Sea Realm warrior guarding it. Lu Yi was now disguised as Li Taibai, a cultivator of the Wanma Ridge. He naturally could not sit crooked. He said, "Everyone has their own business. Senior sister, don't worry too much. The cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance are not children. If the situation is bad, they will ask for help." I hope so. Lin Yu nodded slightly. While the Dark Moon Forest Pass was being attacked by a large number of insectoids, the Startling Waves Lake Pass was also experiencing the same thing. The fissure was located in the center of the two passes. The insectoids came out in 2 batches, one headed north to the Dark Moon Forest Pass, while the other headed south to the Startling Waves Lake Pass. The cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance at the Shocking Waves Lake Pass did not receive any warning, but their reaction was not slow. When they realized that it was a large-scale insect tribe, they sent a message to everyone and returned to the mountain pass early to prepare for defense. They each performed their own duties and were ready for battle. However, the cultivators at the mountain pass soon realized awkwardly that their leader was nowhere to be seen. They could not get any reply even when they tried to send a message with the guard token. When a cultivator from the Sky Yuan sect checked the battlefield mark, he was shocked to find that Lu Yueme's mark had disappeared. The leader was dead. No one knew how she died, and no one knew where she died. The only thing that was certain was that she had died in the past 2 days, because just 2 days ago, someone had seen Lu Yueme's figure at the mouth of the mountain pass. The cultivators of the Sky Yuan sect were deeply grieved. The current situation did not allow them to be too sad. They could only hurriedly send a message to their superiors. While reporting Lu Yueme's death, they also reported that the pass was about to be attacked by the insect swarm. Shocking Waves Lake Pass belonged to Heaven's Gate, one of the 12 gates of the War Province. When Heaven's Gate received the news, they were also shocked. After verifying Lu Yuemei's mark, they confirmed that she was really dead. They could only find a way to dispatch a 6th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator from nearby to rush to Shocking Waves Lake Pass and take over Lu Yuemei's position as Pass Master. It was under such circumstances that Chen Xiao came to Shocking Waves Lake. One, it wasn't that the Haotian Alliance didn't want to send more warriors of the Spirit Sea Realm. It was just that they were short of manpower and couldn't send more warriors of the Spirit Sea Realm in a short period of time. It wasn't easy to find a 6th-order master. A 6th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator was not a low cultivation. When Yang Kai arrived at Shocking Waves Lake Pass, the insect race had besieged it. Looking from a distance, the entire mountain pass was no longer visible, and what entered his field of vision was a sea of insects of all shapes and sizes. Yang Kai used his thunder technique to clear a path through the swarm of insects and rushed toward Shocking Waves Lake Pass with great momentum. The insect race didn't have any probing when they attacked. They acted based on instinct and went all out as soon as they attacked. They didn't have any strategy and relied on numbers to win. Thousands of miles away, at the 2 mountain passes of the 2 camps of the Haotian Alliance and Myriad Demon Ridge, a great battle broke out almost at the same time. The many fortifications at the mountain passes constantly released their power and killed countless insects. At the Dark Moon Forest Pass, Lu Yi and Lin Yu also killed their way out of the mountain pass several times. They killed the Spirit Sea Realm insects in the swarm to reduce the pressure on their side. After fighting for half an hour, Lu Yi rushed out again. The sword chi in his sword gourd was rampant and turned into elegant swords that could take lives and souls. None of the insects below the Spirit Sea Realm could withstand his attack. Those sword lights seemed to have a mind of their own. They shuttled back and forth in the swarm, reaping the lives of the insectoids. All of a sudden, they gathered in one place and slashed down. Every time this happened, a Divine Sea Realm insectoid would be killed. Lin Yu stood on the city wall of the mountain pass. She was recovering her spirit energy while watching quietly. She was amazed. She had encountered quite a few sword cultivators. Every single one of them was the most orthodox sword cultivator with unparalleled killing intent. This was the characteristic of sword cultivators. However, very few sword cultivators could reach Lu Ye's level. While he killed with an iron fist, he gave off a pleasant feeling. He didn't seem to be killing enemies, but using his sword as a pen. This was the first time Lin Yu saw Li Taibai's true strength. Although Li Taibai had been at the mountain pass for more than 3 months, the two had never fought side by side. In the past, they took turns to go out every time. She didn't know how Li Taibai killed enemies. Until today, she was completely sure that Li Taibai still had the ability to kill enemies above his level. Just like his performance when he was in the True Lake Realm. She couldn't help but wonder if she should ask her martial niece, Tong Shuyao, to come back to the mountain pass. Her martial niece was quite pretty. If she could marry Li Taibai, it would be a good story. If that happened, Li Taibai would really be on her side. But soon, she gave up on the idea. If Li Taibai was still in the True Lake Realm, it might be possible. However, he was in the Spirit Sea Realm now and had a bright future. No matter how pretty her martial niece was, how attractive could she be to him? For the past 3 months, many female cultivators in the mountain pass had shown great interest in the new young pass master. They wanted to get close to him, either intentionally or unintentionally. However, there was no news of him getting close to any of the female cultivators. He didn't even tell anyone about it. He talked. This kind of person looked easy to get along with, but deep down, he was extremely arrogant. Not to mention her martial niece. Even if she offered herself, she might not be able to move him. All kinds of strange thoughts flashed through her mind. Suddenly, Lin Yu's expression changed. She shouted, "Martial brother Taibai, come back!" Li Taibai was so excited that he went deep into the swarm of insects. At this moment, there was only a lot of sword chi wreaking havoc in the swarm of insects. Everywhere it passed, insect corpses fell like raindrops. Li Taibai was nowhere to be seen. There was no response. In the blink of an eye, Even the light of the sword chi could not be seen. Lin Yu's expression changed slightly. She wanted to help, but she could not act rashly. She was the backbone of the mountain pass. Even if something happened to Li Tai, as long as she was there, the mountain pass would not be in chaos. However, if she and Li Tai were to be trapped, it would be troublesome. Time ticked by. After half a cup of tea's time, the sword light that looked like a waterfall reappeared in her field of vision. Lin Yu took a long breath, and her towering chest heaved up and down. He was finally back. The sword dragon spun like a top, tearing a hole in the dense swarm of insects. Soon, it broke out of the encirclement and landed beside Lin Yu. The sword chi retracted, revealing Li Tai. Lin Yu scolded. "Junior brother, how could you be so reckless? You really scared me to death." Lu Yi laughed. "I was too excited to kill. I made senior sister worry. There can't be a next time." Lin Yu looked at him sadly. She had dragged a strong man from the wild to help her, and she was very satisfied with this man's strength. In the past 3 months, he had taken a lot of pressure off her. If he died in the swarm, how could she find such a good helper in the future? There won't be a next time. Lu Yi kept nodding. There won't be a next time. Lu Yi kept nodding. Lin Yu realized that her expression was not right, so she quickly adjusted her expression. "Junior brother, stay here. I'll go kill some insects." With that, she rushed out of the mountain pass. She did not go too deep. It was not that she was timid, but as the leader of the mountain pass, she had to consider the safety of the entire mountain pass. She could not act recklessly like Li Tai, so she limited herself to 300 meters away from the mountain pass and looked for the stronger insects to kill. On the city wall of the mountain pass, Lu Ye's doppelganger took out 2 top-grade spirit stones and held them in his hands to replenish his energy. There was no other way. The real body had the talent tree to burn the impurities and replenish his energy by taking a lot of spirit pellets. However, the doppelganger could not do that. Although the doppelganger had a piece of the talent tree's root, it did not have any fuel. It could only use spirit stones to replenish its energy and maintain the purity of its spiritual energy, so that it would not affect its strength. At this moment, Lu Ye's real body was flying across the sky toward the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. He was still a bit worried. Of course, he also wanted to take this opportunity to get away from the Dark Moon Lin Yu, which was something he had planned for a long time. The insectoids were very strong. This time, the scale of the swarm was not small, mainly because of the number of Spirit Sea Realm insectoids. Li Tai and Lin Yu were guarding the Dark Moon Forest Pass, so it was not a big problem. However, if the same effort was put on the Shocking Waves Lake Pass, the pass without Spirit Sea Realm warriors might not be able to withstand the swarm. 1,000 miles was nothing for Lu Yi at this moment. He kept moving forward, and soon arrived at a place 100 miles away from the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. Looking from afar, Lu Yi frowned. There were obviously more insectoids at the Shocking Waves Lake Pass, and the swarm was larger. This might be the scale of the swarm itself, or it might be the result of the Shocking Waves Lake Pass's defense being weak. Did the Haotian Alliance not send any Spirit Sea Realm warriors? No matter how tight their manpower was, they should have sent a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator over since the pass was attacked. Looking at the time, the Haotian Alliance should have known about Lu Yueme's death. He sighed in his heart. In the end, he still had to clean up the mess he had caused. This was the cycle of the heavenly Tao, and retribution was not pleasant. He did not regret killing Lu Yueme at all. In that situation, one of them had to die. Even if he did not want to fight to the death, Lu Yueme would not let him go. However, if other cultivators of the Haotian Alliance were involved, Lu Yi would feel bad. He could even defend the Dark Moon Forest Pass with all his might, let alone the Shocking Waves Lake Pass of the Haotian Alliance. Lu Yi took out Hupu from the spiritual beast pouch and placed it on his shoulder. The aura of the master and the servant merged instantly, and he dashed toward the Shocking Waves Lake Pass quickly. The latest domain name of this site was 1. Chapter 1079. When they were 10 miles away from the swarm, the insects on the periphery turned to face them. Luyi rushed all the way. His divine sea realm aura and spiritual energy fluctuation were obvious. He had no intention of hiding at all. The insects, who were extremely sensitive to spiritual energy fluctuations, were naturally attracted like moths to a lamp. Yi flashed out of Hupo's body and followed closely beside Luyi. She took the lead to activate her technique and attacked the insects in front of her. Luyi didn't release his power. He closed the distance a little and then waved his saber. Streaks of sharp saber light slashed forward like crescent moons. Wherever it passed, the insectoids were sliced in half. The incisions were clean and smooth, and the insectoids' blood and corpses spilled out. Hupo also roared on Luyi's shoulder. Every tiger roar contained a strange power, which slowed down the movements of many insects and made their bodies stiff. As early as at the spirit stream realm, Hupa had shown the ability to suppress the soul. Its tiger roar could often cause a certain degree of impact on the enemy's mind. Now it was also a demonic commander-level monster, which was equivalent to the true lake realm of the human race. The tiger roar's power was naturally stronger. Facing a divine sea realm master like Lu Yueme, the tiger roar had no effect. But facing these insects with low intelligence, the tiger roar's power was undoubtedly displayed. A human, a spirit, and a tiger. After 3 years, they joined forces again. Wherever they passed, insects fell like raindrops. In just a few miles of confrontation, countless insects died. Lu Yi led Yi and crashed into the dense swarm of insects, killing in all directions. On the city wall of the Shocking Waves Lake Pass, a figure was sitting. His aura was as weak as a candle flame. It was Chen Xiao, who was ordered to come to the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. 2 hours ago, he was still high-spirited, but now he was gasping for breath. His injury was too serious. The left half of his body was almost missing. The squirming internal organs in his abdomen could be clearly seen. From the jagged marks on the edge of the wound, he seemed to have been bitten by something. With such a serious injury, he was destined not to live for long. He held on and didn't die because he reported the situation to Heaven's Gate and asked them to send more powerful divine sea realm masters. But the feedback he got was hopeless. The Heaven's Gate asked him to hold on for another 2 hours, because even if they were transferred, it would take some time for the warriors of the spirit sea realm to arrive. 2 hours. Chen Xiao smiled bitterly. Not to mention 2 hours. In his current situation, he wouldn't even be able to last for the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. While he was communicating with his superiors, Chen Xiao suddenly raised his head. His eyes, which were so dim that they were about to be annihilated, suddenly brightened up. His lips, which were as white as paper due to excessive blood loss, moved slightly. What's that sound? Beside Chen Xiao, a medical practitioner was desperately circulating her spiritual energy to treat his injuries. Her slender figure wanted nothing more than to squeeze out all of her spiritual energy, but it was of no help to Chen Xiao's injuries. Bean-sized tears silently rolled down her cheeks. Hearing Chen Xiao's question, the medical practitioner said, "My lord, you must hold on." As for sounds, she could only hear the flapping of the insectoids' wings and the squirming of their mouths. Chen Xiao shook his head. "There's a sound." His eyes brightened. "It's a tiger's roar. Someone's coming." Demonic beasts wouldn't come here for no reason, but that was indeed a tiger's roar. In other words, it should be a cultivator from the beast tamer school. However, he did not know how many people there were and how strong they were. "Quick, alert the others. There's a big insect in the insect swarm." A big insect did not refer to its size, but its strength. Only an insectoid that was comparable to a 7th-order divine sea cultivator, or above, would be called a big insect. This was the tacit understanding that the cultivators of the 9 states had accumulated over the past 2 years of fighting against the insect plague. There was a big insect in the insect swarm that besieged Shocking Waves Lake Pass. He had suffered a loss at the hands of a big insect. In the fierce battle, his protective spirit energy was broken and half of his body was bitten off. If not for the fact that he was very close to the pass at that time, and had many cultivators at the pass to help him, he would have lost his life on the spot. Under normal circumstances, A human with similar strength would be able to deal with an insectoid swarm. This was because human cultivators had all kinds of methods, while the insectoids relied on their instincts. No matter how weak a cultivator's foundation was, it would not be a problem for them to fight 2 or even 3 insectoids at once. The key point was that there were many big insects in this insect swarm. Not only were there comparable to a 7th-order Divine Sea cultivator, there were even some comparable to an 8th-order Divine Sea cultivator. He had already suffered a great loss, so naturally, he did not want others to follow in his footsteps. The medical cultivator beside him hurriedly urged her spirit energy and shouted, "Be careful, there are many big insects in this insect swarm." Although she tried her best to shout, her voice was still drowned out by the sound of the many insectoids flapping their wings. It was unknown whether the newcomer heard her or not. Lu Yi heard her, but there was no room for him to evade. At this moment, he had charged into the insect swarm and was surrounded by insectoids from all directions. In particular, there were a dozen or so insectoids with fierce auras that brought him great pressure. These dozen or so insectoids should be canine insectoids. At first glance, they looked like canines. They had 4 limbs and short tails, but their bodies were covered in thick carapaces that provided them with strong protection. Lu Ye's saber light slashed at them, destroying ordinary insectoids, but to these canine insectoids, it was like scratching an itch. Their mouths were like those of crocodiles, with sharp teeth. If one was accidentally bitten, it would not end well. The dozen or so hound insects formed a semicircle and surrounded Lu Yi, their powerful and fierce auras instantly allowing Lu Yi to perceive their existence. There were too many of them. Even Lu Yi did not dare to face them head-on. He could only leap up and rush upwards, looking for an opportunity to break through. The hound insects followed. In terms of speed, they were far inferior to Lu Yi. If it was a normal escape, Lu Yi could easily shake them off. Hound insects were not known for their speed, but being surrounded by them, Lu Yi could not move at full speed. No matter which direction he fled in, there would be a large number of insectoids blocking his way. With a crackle of the mountain saber, he forcibly carved out a path of blood. The dozen or so insectoids were getting closer and closer. The leading insectoids had already opened their bloody mouths and were biting at him. Seeing that there was no way to escape, Lu Yi could only push his spirit energy. With him as the center, an invisible force suddenly spread out and turned into an attack. The insectoids around him all stiffened as if they had been struck by lightning. Even the hound insects were no exception. Using spiritual energy to deal with the insect race was the fastest way to achieve results. The insect race was not intelligent, which meant that their spiritual energy was weak. Therefore, spiritual sea realm cultivators of the human race could easily suppress the insect race's spiritual energy. However, this method could not be used too often. After all, spirit energy was limited even for divine sea realm cultivators. Moreover, replenishing it was not as convenient as replenishing spirit energy. Once too much was consumed, it was easy to fall into a state of dispirited state. While the insectoid stiffened, Lu Yi waved the mountain saber in his hand and growled, "E." Even though they had not seen each other for a few years, their minds were still connected. He quickly flashed back into Hupo's body to hide. In an instant, the surrounding space darkened as if a bright moon had risen. The cold moonlight scattered, and the dense moonlight bloomed wantonly like iron flowers. The second style of the tyrant blade, crescent moon. This was the most suitable blade technique to be used when surrounded. Thud, thud, thud. The area around Lu Yi within a radius of 300 feet was almost cleared out, and it was unknown how many insectoids had died. Only the hound insects remained unscathed. They were strong enough, and the carapace on their backs provided a thick layer of protection. Even if the crescent moon's blade struck them, it only left a mark on their carapace. However, with the huge impact, the hound insects were still beaten down. They quickly stabilized themselves and pounced at Lu Yi again. However, after Lu Yi used crescent moon, he quickly turned around and rushed down toward the mountain pass. The path ahead was blocked. Lu Yi swung his saber to open a path. Upo's tiger roar shook the sky. The man and tiger cooperated with each other skillfully. In the Shocking Waves Lake, many cultivators looked in the direction of the source of the commotion. They were all extremely nervous. With Chen Zhao's example, everyone was worried about the newcomer. They did not know if he could successfully break through. The huge insectoid swarm suddenly began to wriggle. It was as if salt had been sprinkled into a pot of hot oil. Immediately after, a saber ray slashed out from the wriggling area. Following closely behind the saber ray was a flickering figure. Chen Zhao quickly said, "Quickly open the formation." There was no need for him to give any orders. The cultivator in charge of the defensive formation immediately activated the jade pendant in his hand and opened a hole in the formation in the direction of the newcomer. Lu Yi entered in a flash, and the hole closed up again. The insectoids behind him were isolated outside, and they were drowned in attacks. After charging into Shocking Wave Lake, Lu Yi released and withdrew his divine sense, and he roughly understood the situation here. The situation here was much worse than the Dark Moon Forest Pass. Many cultivators were injured or killed, and there were many insectoid corpses left on the city wall. It was obvious that the insectoids had broken through the defensive line more than once, but they were all blocked by the cultivators here. In comparison, the Dark Moon Forest Pass's defense was obviously more stable. At the very least, the insectoids had not broken through the defensive line there. There were two reasons for this situation. First, the insectoids here were stronger, and second, there were no masters here. On the Dark Moon Forest Pass, there were two Spirit Sea Realm cultivators, Li Taibai and Lin Yu. They took turns to kill the enemy, greatly reducing the pressure on the pass's defense. There were no such conditions here. However, there was the aura of a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator. Lu Yi came to Chen Zhao's side and looked at his tragic injuries. He cupped his fists and saluted. Law Division's Lu Yi greets senior brother. Chen Zhao looked behind Lu Yi, as if he was expecting something. Lu Yi understood and said, "I was alone. I was passing by and noticed something was wrong, so I came to take a look. Junior brother Lu is considerate." Chen Zhao sighed slightly. "It must have been hard for you to rush in. Didn't you encounter those insects?" Lu Ye's cultivation was only at the second-order Spirit Sea Realm, far inferior to Chen Zhao. If he had really encountered those insects, he would not have been lucky. Chapter 1080. I ran fast, Lu Yi explained. Your luck is not bad. Chen Zhao did not suspect anything. In his opinion, Lu Ye's luck was indeed good to be able to charge in alive. Unfortunately, he was so unlucky to be surrounded by those giant insects and suffered such heavy injuries. Taking a few deep breaths, Chen Zhao's voice became weak. Jade Blood Sex Lu Yi, I've heard of you. I hope you can continue to be so lucky. I've already asked for help, but you should understand the current situation. Even with the State Guard's background, it's not that easy to find suitable people. Guanyi ordered me to hold on for 2 hours, but I can't do it. Can I entrust the defense of Shocking Waves Lake Pass to you? No matter what, you have to protect the pass for 2 hours. Lu Yi wanted to say a few words of consolation, but when the words were at the tip of his tongue, he swallowed them back. Chen Zhao knew his injuries better than anyone else, so there was no need for him to lie to himself and others. With a serious expression he said, I will do my best. Good. Chen Zhao nodded. Then I'll leave it to you. When he finished speaking, his spiritual energy suddenly dissipated. His head slowly drooped, his eyes dark. The medical cultivator beside him was still desperately urging her spiritual energy to maintain his vitality. But how could it be effective? Chen Zhao was able to hold on until now only because of the last breath in his heart. Now that Lu Yi had come, although not satisfactory, he was still a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator. After handing over the task of guarding Shocking Waves Lake Pass, he could not hold on anymore. Don't waste your energy, Lu Yi said. The medical cultivator wiped the tears from her eyes. Even though she had seen many deaths since she embarked on the path of cultivation, every time someone died in front of her, she hated her own incompetence. Many medical cultivators would go through this psychological process. They were the people who could see life and death the most. From the initial feeling of not being able to bear it, to gradually numb to seeing life and death, this was the growth of medical cultivators. The attack and defense continued. On the walls of the pass, many fortifications let out a buzzing roar. Powerful attacks struck the insect swarm. Lu Yi looked around and met the gazes of many shocking waves Lake Pass cultivators. He keenly sensed the low morale. It was inevitable. Lu Yuemei, the original pass master, had lost her life for some unknown reason, which was enough to make people uneasy. Then there was the insect swarm. Finally, a warrior at the Spirit Sea realm came to support them. However, the moment he arrived, he was severely injured. His life was worse than death. Now he had gone with Lu Yuemei. Although Gu Luyi had arrived, Lu Ye's cultivation was only a trivial second-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator. Even the sixth-order Chen Xiao had no room to play. So what could a second-order cultivator do in this situation? The entire Shocking Waves Lake Pass had lost its backbone from the very beginning. If it weren't for the daily training and the tacit cooperation of everyone, the pass would have fallen long ago in the face of such a scale of insect tide. The prospects were not optimistic, so it was natural for morale to be low. If it was possible, breaking out of the encirclement and escaping was a good idea. After all, there were no mortals living here. Even if the insectoids took over the mountain pass, there would not be too many losses. As long as the soldiers at the mountain pass were alive, they would be able to kill their way back. However, in the current situation, it was impossible to break through. The insect horde had surrounded the entire mountain pass. If they really did that, how many of them would survive? The best time to break through was when the insect horde had surrounded the mountain pass, and they had already missed it. What a mess! Lu Yi sighed in his heart. But in the end, this mess was related to him. If Lu Yuemei was still alive, she would be here when the insect swarm arrived. The situation at the mountain pass would not be so bad. No matter what, Lu Yuemei was still strong. But this woman just had to court death. As their eyes met, Lu Yi spoke slowly. I have been entrusted with this task. I, Lu Yi, am also a member of the State Guard. Since this is a chance encounter, I cannot refuse. Today, I will defend the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. I hope everyone can work together with me to slay the insectoids and protect the mountain pass. Please give the order, sir. A true Lake Realm cultivator cupped his fists. Please give the order, sir. Everyone shouted in unison. None of you are children. There is no need for me to say what you should do in this situation. Do what you did before. I am not more proficient in defending the mountain pass than any of you. I only have one order, and that is to ensure that the defensive line does not break. Hearing this, many soldiers heaved a sigh of relief. They were afraid that Lu Yi would really take over the mountain pass's defensive line and carelessly give out orders, ruining their rhythm and arrangements. These days there were many armchair strategists, especially when Lu Yi was so young. He was younger than all the true Lake Realm cultivators present. It was inevitable that he would have some problems with grandiose achievements. Fortunately, although he is young, he still has some self-awareness. Sir, the insect swarm is fierce. If there were no Spirit Sea Realm insectoids, the mountain pass's defense could still hold on. But there are many Spirit Sea Realm insectoids in the swarm, and there is also a big insect. A bearded man spoke. This person was a true Lake Realm 9th Order cultivator, only a step away from the Spirit Sea Realm. Just by simply wearing it on the body, it could raise a person's aura to such a violent degree. Was this still a fake armor? While he was still in shock, the scarlet figure had already rushed out. It swept past the light screen of the defensive array and crashed into the dense swarm of insects. Its speed was so fast that even a peak true lake stage cultivator like him could not see it clearly. He only saw two scarlet streams of light dragging out from the child's eyes. The tall figure waved the huge saber. With a simple slash, a crack appeared in the airtight swarm of insects. Immediately after, the figure charged in. In an instant, countless lives were lost. All the cultivators who saw this scene were stunned. For a moment, the defense of the mountain pass was interrupted. The originally dense attacks became sparse. Fortunately, the swarm was attracted by Lu Yi and did not take the opportunity to attack. Otherwise, the defense line might really be broken. At that time, there would be many more casualties. Don't be in a daze. Everyone move. Yu Huang shouted angrily. The many shocked soldiers seemed to have woken up from a dream and hurriedly carried out their duties. They did not know whether they could survive the siege of the insect swarm this time. They also did not know whether they could last until the reinforcements from Heaven's Gate arrived. However, they knew what they should do, especially after Lu Yi brazenly killed his way into the swarm of insects alone. Others who were just passing by could give up their lives like this. How could they, the soldiers of the Shocking Waves Lake Pass, fall behind others? It was nothing more than people living in the pass. If the pass was broken, people would die. The originally low morale suddenly soared. It had to be said that the leader taking the lead was the best way to stimulate morale. In this kind of situation, no matter how extravagant one's words were, it was not as meaningful as actual actions. Lu Yi did not know how to bewitch people's hearts, nor did he know how to control them. He did not have such thoughts. All the choices he made were forced by the situation, and also because of his heart. Wearing the dragon throne was too suitable for this kind of battlefield. There was no need to deliberately search for the enemy's traces. It was just a simple swing of the sword. Every swing would have a result. On the contrary, a one-on-one battle like with Lu Yueme was actually not very suitable for the dragon throne. This was also the reason why he did not use the dragon throne when he fought with Lu Yueme previously. It was not only because he had already activated the blood-stained spiritual tattoos and the beast transformation secret technique. After wearing the dragon throne, the whole person's vision increased a lot. When facing a single target, the strength of the dragon throne could not be fully displayed. This thing was completely used to deal with a large-scale siege. With the strength of one person, fighting against enemies from all sides. Wherever the dragon ridge blade fell, even the divine sea realm insects were as fragile as paper. Chapter 1081. The insect swarm was wreaking havoc. Amidst the swarm of insects, the tall scarlet figure dashed around like a wolf, constantly waving his dragon spine saber, slashing out huge blood-red saber waves one after another. The insects around him were constantly cleared out, only to be replaced by more. The cycle repeated itself. The insectoids were not afraid of death. Many insectoids would bite their prey as hard as they could before they died, or they would activate their unique abilities. There were all kinds of abilities, such as the spider-like insectoids that spat out spider silk, and the ant-like insectoids that spat out corrosive mucus. In an instant the scene boiled over. Dense sounds constantly came from the Dragon Emperor. In just a few moments, the scarlet armor had turned colorful. On the Dragon Emperor, Lu Yi spread out his divine sense, probing for the auras of divine sea realm insects in the swarm. Whenever he sensed them, he would kill them. Although the insectoid swarm was massive, the divine sea realm insectoids were the ones that posed the greatest threat to the defense line at the mountain pass. He was alone after all. Even with the Dragon Emperor, it was impossible for him to kill all of the insectoids. Therefore, he had to try his best to get rid of the high-level insectoids to reduce the pressure at the mountain pass, especially the dozen or so insects he encountered on his way here. If he couldn't take care of them, no matter how many insects he killed, it would be useless. In such a battle, defense had become meaningless because Dragon Emperor was being attacked from all directions at every moment. Even if she wanted to defend, she could not do so. He could only attack, keep attacking, and firmly grasp the initiative in his hands. Before he ran out of strength, he had to kill as many insects as possible. His foundation was rapidly draining away. During the confrontation, Lu Yi felt like he had turned into a dilapidated house, leaking air everywhere. Looking at his several trump cards, the blood-red spirit inscriptions consumed the least energy, followed by the beast transformation secret technique. The most energy-consuming was the Dragon Emperor. Because once he wore the Dragon Emperor, It was like countless needles that couldn't be seen with the naked eye were stabbing into his body, madly devouring his strength, including his spirit energy, vitality, and spiritual energy. This kind of devouring was omnidirectional and simply unstoppable. It was also the price he had to pay to wear the Dragon Emperor. The only thing that made Lu Yi feel fortunate was that he was now a second-order Divine Sea cultivator, so his foundation was much stronger than before, so he would be able to persist for much longer. The violent energy waves were like lights in the dark, attracting countless insectoids to swarm over like moths to a flame. In the midst of the fierce battle, Lu Yi suddenly turned to look in a certain direction. His field of vision was filled with all kinds of strange insectoids, but in that direction, there were several powerful auras that were clearly not ordinary. It was those dogs. Ever since he had committed suicide and entered the swarm, he had been looking for traces of these hound bugs. Now that he had finally found them, he no longer hesitated. He waved his dragon spine saber and forcefully made an opening. In just 3 breaths, a few hound bugs mixed in with many other zergs came into view. They were not large in size, but they were extremely agile in this chaotic battlefield. Using the cover of other insectoids, they attempted to approach Lu Yi. However, Lu Yi had been paying attention to their tracks. How could he let them succeed so easily? The moment they saw each other, the dogs and insects seemed to realize that their whereabouts had been exposed. They roared in unison and pounced on Lu Yi from different directions. Lu Yi stared at the nearest hound bug and slashed down with his saber. The dragon spine saber was shrouded in a red glow, like a red-hot iron. Under the unparalleled sharpness of the saber, everything with a sharp edge was cut in half. However, at this moment, more ferocious auras appeared behind and to the sides of Lu Yi. Under the cover of many insectoids, other hound bugs revealed themselves and surrounded Lu Yi, attacking together. Lu Yi was slightly startled. These hound bugs seemed to be a little different from ordinary insectoids. They actually knew how to cooperate with each other and hid themselves before they attacked. 1 inch a trance, Lu Yi felt like he had been ambushed by a pack of wolves. How were these hound bugs? It was more appropriate to call them wolf bugs. More than a dozen hound bugs above the 7th order Divine Sea realm attacked together. Even Lu Yi, who was wearing the dragon throne, did not dare to ignore them. The dragon throne's defense was truly amazing. After all, it was an armor refined from dragon scales. Since the beginning of the battle, countless insectoids had used various methods, but they had not been able to damage the dragon throne. They had only made its surface mottled, but that was at the cost of Lu Ye's own strength. In other words, all the attacks that hit the dragon throne would consume Lu Ye's strength. Wearing the dragon throne was also constantly consuming his strength. With such double consumption, even if Lu Yi was now a Divine Sea realm cultivator, he would not be able to last long. He could not let so many hound bugs attack him at the same time. Otherwise, he would not be able to defend himself. In the blink of an eye, Lu Yi rushed towards the 3-headed hound bug in front of him like lightning. In the blink of an eye, they were engaged in close combat. He punched a hound bug that was pouncing at him, sending it flying. He then kicked out and sent a second hound bug flying. The dragon spine saber slashed down to meet the 3rd hound bug. The huge saber turned into a blood-red arc and slashed at the back of the hound bug. The white bone carapace was immediately split open, and the saber was embedded in it. If it were any other insectoid, they would have been dismembered by such a saber strike. But these hound bugs' defense was obviously stronger than ordinary insectoids. The dragon spine saber was unable to penetrate them completely. Lu Ye's spiritual energy surged wildly and was added to the saber. He roared angrily and dragged the saber down at the same time. An ear-piercing sound of friction rang out. The hound bug hissed in pain, its mouthparts squirming endlessly. Green blood spurted out. Its solid bone carapace was finally split open, and its small body was divided into 2 halves. When its aura was annihilated, Lu Yi did not have the slightest joy after his success, because many fierce auras around him and behind him were closing in. Asterisk bang bang bang. Asterisk the hound bug's body slammed into the dragon throne, and clung to it like a leech. Its mouth parts were densely packed with fangs, and it bit fiercely all over the dragon throne. Lu Yi only felt that his foundation was like a flood that broke through a dam at this moment. Even the dragon throne itself was making sounds of difficulty. He raised his hand and grabbed a hound bug that was biting his right arm. He aimed the dragon spine saber at its constantly opening and closing mouthparts and stabbed straight at it. This hound bug obviously realized that something was wrong and struggled to resist. However, under Lu Ye's tight confinement, how could it break free? The huge saber pierced through the hound bug's mouth and out from its tail. With a vicious slash, half of its body was cut off. Lu Yi raised his hand to grab another hound bug. However, to his surprise, after these hound bugs saw the tragic fate of their companions, they all retreated, allowing him to grab Smoky Air. They seemed to know that they could not be captured by Lu Yi again, or else it would be a disaster. Lu Ye's expression was solemn. He finally realized one thing. The intelligence of these hound bugs was much higher than ordinary insectoids. He did not know if all insectoids were like this, or if only these hound bugs had such ability, but their performance was indeed different from ordinary insectoids. 6. After a fierce battle, and exhausting a great deal of his reserves, he had only managed to kill 2 of the hound bugs. Lu Yi was naturally dissatisfied. He immediately set his sights on the nearest hound bug, and was just about to attack when suddenly, a violent aura approached from below. Lu Yi hastily looked down and saw a huge, ferocious mouthpart rushing towards him. The mouthpart was as large as a house, and its interior was filled with crisscrossing fangs. It was a terrifying sight. He wanted to dodge, but he was surrounded by insectoids from all directions, so he could not dodge for a while. The next moment, the world darkened, and he could no longer see his surroundings. Lu Yi was furious. He never thought that there would be a day when he would be swallowed into the stomach of an insectoid. That huge mouthpart should belong to a type of hound bug. He had seen it before, but although this type of hound bug was ferocious and terrifying, it had an obvious drawback, which was that it could not fly. They could only move on the ground, so Lu Yi had ignored them all this time. However, this did not mean that they were helpless against enemies in the air. Because of their large size, they could instantly spring up and open their mouthparts to swallow the enemy in the air. That was how Lu Yi fell into this trap. Not only was he swallowed, but many insectoids around him were also swallowed. The feeling of being squeezed came from all directions, and an extremely corrosive force enveloped the Dragon Emperor. The space was narrow, and it was inconvenient for him to wield his saber. If it were an ordinary armament cultivator being swallowed like this, it would be difficult for him to escape. If he was trapped for a long time, he would either be squeezed to death or corroded to death. However, Lu Yi was not only proficient in the methods of armament cultivators. As his spiritual power fluctuated, the mysterious yin and yang quickly outlined and merged. In the blink of an eye, a fiery red spiritual power egg was formed, and the eggshell broke. Along with the clear cry of a phoenix, a fire phoenix broke out of the shell. A scorching force burned in all directions, and sizzling sounds could be heard continuously. Soon, a big hole was burned in the hound bug's abdomen, and it broke free. Its fiery red wings spread out, and a huge creature with a wingspan of dozens of feet appeared with a bang. If an outsider saw this scene, they would see that the tall Dragon Emperor seemed to have grown a pair of wings. Lu Yi dragged his saber and cut open a huge gash on the worm's abdomen. He rushed straight up, and at the wound, the worm's internal organs tumbled out. When he once again soared into the air and began to slaughter wantonly, on the ground, there was a glutinous worm whose stomach had been cut open. Its body was writhing madly as it struggled for its life. In the mountain pass, the formations buzzed. Many soldiers worked together to resist the waves of attacks from the insect swarm. Everyone was contributing their strength, especially the formation cultivators and refiners. They were constantly running around the city walls, repairing the formations that were damaged due to overload, and replacing the spirit weapons and spirit treasures that were placed in the eye of the formations. The soldiers were keenly aware that the insectoids' attacks on the mountain pass had weakened significantly, and they were no longer as crazy as before. Moreover, the scale of the insect tide was clearly smaller than before. Naturally, they did not think that this was the insectoids being merciful. There was only one reason for such a change, and that was that one person had single-handedly killed his way into the insectoid swarm, diverting too much of the insectoids' attention and killing too many of them. Please enter the latest update in your browser. Translator, Naibo Studio Dogbug. Chapter 1082. Due to the insect swarm's concealment, the soldiers at the mountain pass couldn't see the battle taking place inside. So naturally, they didn't know what was going on inside. They could only feel violent energy fluctuations coming from inside, accompanied by the cries of phoenixes, and vaguely visible crimson rays of light being emitted from the insect swarm. Yu Huang moved through the various areas of the pass, and took the initiative to assume the heavy responsibility of coordinating the defenses of the various areas of the pass, and he was extremely busy. At this moment of danger, the entire Shocking Wave Lakeside Pass was unprecedentedly united as one, and they went forward with all their might. Because everyone knew that if they were unable to overcome the calamity today, then what awaited them would surely be an extremely tragic end. Turning his head to look at the still dense insect tide, Yu Huang secretly hoped that Luye from Blue Blood sect would hold on. His actions had given hope to the soldiers at Shocking Waves Lake Pass. But in the end, he was only a second-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator. No one knew how long he could last. While secretly worried, Yu Huang was also somewhat puzzled. Could a second-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator really have such great ability? He had come into contact with many Divine Sea Realm cultivators. The original Mountain Pass master, Lu Yueme, was a 7th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator. But even if Lu Yueme was still alive, if she really penetrated so deep into the enemy's ranks, wouldn't she be able to hold on for so long? In such an environment where enemies were on all sides, a single mistake could lead to eternal damnation. In the end, Yu Huang could only attribute Lu Ye's ability to his magical armor. As time passed, the scale of the insect tide became smaller and smaller. What made the soldiers at the mountain pass especially gratified was that there were no Divine Sea Realm insects among the attacking insect race. So even though their numbers were still large, the mountain pass's defenses were still able to cope. As long as they persevered, victory would be theirs. Lu Yi, on the other hand, was finding it difficult to hold on. More than half an hour had passed since the battle began, and the number of insects that died at his hands was hard to count. He had almost single-handedly reduced the scale of the insect tide by 20%, and with the efforts of the soldiers at the mountain pass, the scale of the insect tide was now only half of its initial size. He had almost eliminated all of the Divine Sea Realm insects, except for the dog insects. These insects were too cunning, and because they were small, they were extremely agile. After Lu Yi killed 2 of them in succession, they also realized that Lu Yi was not to be trifled with, so they never confronted him head-on. Instead, they often came over and quickly fled, just like how a ghost cultivator would flee thousands of miles away if their attack failed. With the cover of the insect tide, Lu Yi could not do anything to them. In addition to the first 2 hound bugs, Lu Yi killed 2 more, but they were all lucky. But there were at least 8 hound bugs left. Such a nimble and powerful force was a huge threat to both him and the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. On the dragon throne, Lu Yi panted heavily, swinging his saber numbly. Because he had been wearing the dragon throne for a long time, he had consumed too much energy. If this continued, he would not even have the strength to continue fighting, let alone maintain the dragon throne. He had to think of a way to break out of this situation. Returning to the Shocking Waves Lake Pass to rest was the best choice. It was easy for him to recover, and it would not take long for him to be full of energy. However, during this period of recovery, if there was no one to restrain these hound bugs, the defenses of the Shocking Waves Lake Pass might not be able to withstand the attack of the insect tide. The scale of the insect tide had indeed decreased, but the defense of the pass had also weakened. This was due to many factors, such as the energy consumption of the cultivators, the damage caused by the formation being overloaded, and most importantly, the lack of manpower at the pass made it difficult to fully utilize the advantages of the defense. Because of all these factors, although the scale of the insect tide had decreased, the defense of the pass was not as good as before. Therefore, the 8-headed hound bugs and the current insect tide were still a huge challenge to the defense of the pass. Once the defense was broken, the soldiers at the pass would be in danger. Therefore, he could not return to the pass. Since he could not return to the pass, he could only think of a way to lure these hound bugs away. Although these hound bugs were more intelligent than ordinary bugs, they were still bugs. Lu Yi could feel that they were very vengeful, especially after he killed 4 of their companions. During this period of time, they had been thinking of ways to take his life. If it were not for the dragon throne, he might really have died here. With a plan in mind, Lu Yi turned and charged out. As he spread his divine telekinesis, he monitored the movements of the hound bugs. As expected, these hound bugs were watching him closely, hiding among the mini bugs, waiting for an opportunity to attack. This was exactly what Lu Yi wanted. He waved his dragon ridge saber, and waves crackled as it carried the aura of death. During this time, the hound bugs came and went, pouncing to bite Lu Yi and quickly retreating, not giving him a chance to fight back. Lu Yi could not be bothered with them, as long as they followed him. Before he left, he wanted to kill as many ordinary bugs as possible. After a few breaths, the front suddenly became empty, and light entered his vision. He had killed his way out. Behind him was a large group of bugs. Lu Yi turned and swung his saber, and a huge blood-red saber light swept out, killing many more bugs. However, his figure suddenly swayed, and then there was a cracking sound. The dragon throne on his body fell apart, turning into countless tiny scale fragments. They gathered together, and once again turned into that round ball that was the size of an infant's head. Lu Yi grabbed it and stuffed it into his storage space. His body swayed as he flew into the distance. However, he was worried. If the 8-headed hound bugs did not chase after him, he would have to kill his way back. If that was the case, he could only choose to return to the past to recuperate. Fortunately, his worry was unnecessary. As if seeing him put away the dragon throne, they realized that this human was an arrow at the end of its flight, and no longer had the fierce aura from before. The 8 hound bugs that had been watching him no longer hesitated and chased after him at an extremely fast speed. Lu Yi was relieved. While trying his best to escape, he took out a large number of spirit pills and stuffed them into his mouth. He then swallowed a drop of soul-washing water to quickly refine them to replenish his energy. The hound bugs were very fast. Lu Yi's normal speed was not as fast as them. He could only activate the wind spirit tattoo to support himself, which was why he was barely on par with them. As they chased, the human and the 8 bugs flew through the air, leaving the other bugs far behind. On the city wall of the pass, Yu Huang keenly sensed the change in the swarm, because there were no more fluctuations of battle. His heart skipped a beat. Is Lu Yi dead? It would be a pity if such a young and talented man died here. Soon he denied his guess. Even though the insectoid horde had increased their efforts, they did not see any divine sea realm insectoids, let alone big insect. Yu Huang understood that Lu Yi was not dead, but he must be in a bad situation, so he chose to lure the bugs away. Lu Yi's situation was not good, and so was the pass. Without Lu Yi's suppression, the insect swarm put all their energy into breaking through. For a moment, the defense line of the pass was in danger. He roared and shouted to encourage the soldiers. He desperately poured his spiritual power into a formation to activate the power of the formation. However, on the battlefield, although morale and determination were important, it was still determined by strength. As the insect swarm gathered, the defense line of the pass finally collapsed. A large number of bugs rushed in from the defense line. The cultivators around the defense line tried their best to resist, but they still could not stop the expansion of the gap in the defense line. Yu Huang rushed forward. After fighting for only a moment, he was covered in wounds. As he watched the cultivators around him fall one after another, his heart filled with hatred and anger. He stood in front of the gap, roaring as he killed his enemies. Many ferocious and terrifying bugs swarmed toward him, but Yu Huang did not retreat. Even if he died, he would use his body to block the gap. Just as he was about to die, spots of starlight suddenly filled the air and instantly filled his vision. Then, violent energy fluctuations came out from the spots of starlight. Yu Huang's nostrils suddenly shrank. Realizing that something was wrong, he hurriedly pushed his spiritual energy to protect himself. In the next moment, a series of explosions rang out. In his vision, large areas of flames burned. The powerful impact sent Yu Huang flying. He fell to the ground and coughed violently. Wuxia is back. At this moment, this thought appeared in Yu Huang's mind, but he soon realized that something was wrong. Wuxia was a weapon cultivator, but the method he used just now was performed by a magic cultivator. Strong reinforcements are here. Yu Huang reacted. He looked up and saw an average-sized figure, standing where he had been standing, blocking the gap in the defensive line. He unleashed powerful spells of a large scale, stopping the attacks of a large number of insectoids on his own. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Yu Huang recognized this person. This was an 8th Order Divine Sea Master from Heaven's Gate Pass. He seemed to be surnamed Wan, but Yu Huang did not know what his name was. Wiping the blood off his face, he hurriedly rushed to this person's side. Old Wan. Old Wan used his means to block the bug tide while speaking. This bug tide is not large, so how did it end up like this? Didn't Shen Xiao say that there was a tiger insect? He had killed his way in from outside the bug tide, but he did not see a single tiger insect. He did not even see a single divine sea realm bug. Logically speaking, such an insect tide should not be a big threat to the mountain pass. However, it was extremely difficult to defend the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. And from the looks of it, there were even a number of casualties. The tiger insect was lured away by Wuxia. There were also many divine sea realm bugs. They should have all been killed by him. Yu Huang hurriedly explained. Wuxia. Old Wan raised his eyebrows. That Wuxia from Blue Blood Sect. Where is he now? I don't know. I couldn't sense his aura from just now, but he should still be alive. Old Wan frowned and did not say anything more. He ordered, consolidate the defense line first. Yu Huang received the order and quickly called the cultivators at the mountain pass over. After the border defense line was stabilized, Old Wan waved his sleeves and brazenly charged out. For Divine Sea Realm cultivators, in such a situation, they could only display their advantage by taking the initiative to attack, instead of defending the pass with the many soldiers. Offense was the best defense. The more they killed, the less pressure there would be on the defense line. Wuxia did this, Old Wan did this, Li Taibai and Lin Yu did this too. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.